Hello everyone and welcome. This is Imagine Verse speaking. We have handpicked a wonderful story for today. What if Fleur Delacour found Harry at age 6 and her Veela magic crowned him as the Prophesied Veela king? New videos drop regularly, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated. And don't forget to like if you enjoy the story. Shall we begin? Here goes. Chapter 1. The discovery. The cupboard under the stairs was dark, but 6-year-old Harry Potter had long since grown accustomed to the shadows. He lay on his thin mattress, tracing patterns in the dust that floated through the sliver of light beneath the door. Outside, he could hear his cousin Dudley thundering down the stairs, each step sending a shower of wood splinters onto Harry's blanket. "Mummy! Daddy! Hurry up! The zoo opens in an hour." Dudley's voice penetrated the cupboard door, making Harry wince. The zoo. Harry had almost forgotten. Aunt Petunia had mentioned it last night while serving dinner, a special treat for Dudley's good marks, which Harry suspected had more to do with his teacher's fear of Uncle Vernon than any actual achievement. Harry would be staying with Mrs. Fig, the elderly neighbor who owned too many cats and whose house smelled of cabbage. Except Mrs. Fig had rung early this morning. Harry had heard Aunt Petunia's irritated tone through the cupboard walls, something about a broken leg and being unable to watch the boy. The lock on Harry's door clicked, and Aunt Petunia's pinched face appeared. "Get up," she snapped. "We're leaving in 30 minutes. You're coming with us, but I'm warning you." She leaned in, her bony finger pointing at Harry's face. "One funny business, one strange thing, and you'll be in this cupboard until Christmas. Understood?" Harry nodded quickly. "Yes, Aunt Petunia." "Good. Make yourself presentable. And do something about that hair." She closed the door without locking it this time. Harry ran his fingers through his perpetually messy black hair, knowing from experience that no amount of combing would tame it. He changed quickly into the least ragged of Dudley's hand-me-downs, a grey t-shirt that hung to his knees and jeans he had to roll up several times and secure with an old belt. The prospect of visiting the zoo sent a thrill through him despite his aunt's warning. He rarely left Privet Drive except for school, and he'd never been to a zoo before. Perhaps, if he stayed quiet and invisible enough, they might forget he was there, and he could actually enjoy himself. As Harry stepped out of his cupboard, the morning sunlight streaming through the front windows momentarily blinded him. For the briefest moment, he felt something stir within him, a warm sensation that flickered like a candle flame before fading back into dormancy. Miles away, across the English Channel, a young girl with silvery blonde hair sat bolt upright in her bed, her blue eyes wide and alert. "Maman," she called out. "It's happening." Fleur Delacour had been looking forward to this trip to England for months, though not for the reasons her parents believed. At 9 years old, she was already displaying the heightened intuition common to Veela descendants, but the dreams that had haunted her for the past year were something else entirely. In these dreams, a crown of silver fire hovered over a boy with emerald eyes and a lightning scar. The images were fragmented, the boy curled in darkness, the boy running from larger shadows, the boy staring longingly through windows at families that weren't his own. Each dream ended the same way, the silver crown descending, and Fleur herself calling out words in an ancient tongue she didn't understand when awake. She had told her mother about these dreams 3 months ago, after waking up sobbing for the 4th night in a row. Ollivander Delicours had listened with growing concern, her own quarter Veela heritage giving weight to her daughter's visions. When Fleur described the lightning scar, Apollon and Sebastian had exchanged meaningful looks. The Potter boy, Sebastian had whispered to his wife that night, unaware that Fleur was listening at their bedroom door. "It has to be." "But that would mean, impossible," Apollon had replied, though her voice trembled. "That prophecy is thousands of years old. Many have searched. But if it's true, ma chérie, we cannot ignore it. Especially with what happened to his parents." And so the Delicours planned a cultural visit to England, a journey that puzzled their extended family, given Sebastian's position in the French Ministry of Magic and their general disdain for British magical politics. Now, as their enchanted car crossed from Dover towards Surrey, Fleur felt the pull growing stronger. Something inside her was awakening, the quarter of her blood that tied her to the ancient Veela race, those beings of fire and air whose magic predated wizardry itself. "Are you feeling unwell, ma petite?" her mother asked, noticing Fleur's flushed cheeks. Fleur shook her head, silver blonde hair dancing around her shoulders. "Non, maman. I feel strange. But not sick." She glanced at her 3-year-old sister Gabrielle, who slept peacefully in her car seat. "It's getting stronger." Sebastian exchanged a glance with his wife in the rearview mirror. "Can you tell which direction?" Fleur closed her eyes, concentrating on the tugging sensation in her chest. She pointed slightly to the left of their current route. "That way." Without hesitation, Sebastian adjusted their course. They had come too far to ignore their daughter's guidance now. The morning at the zoo had gone surprisingly well for Harry. Uncle Vernon was too busy indulging Dudley to pay him much attention, and Aunt Petunia seemed distracted, constantly checking her watch and scanning the crowds as though expecting someone. Harry lingered at the reptile house while the Dursleys moved ahead. A massive Brazilian boa constrictor caught his attention, or rather, he caught its attention. The snake raised its head as Harry approached, watching him with an intelligence that made the hair on his arms stand up. "Sorry about him," Harry whispered, nodding toward Dudley, who had been rapping on the glass earlier. "He doesn't understand what it's like, lying there day after day with people pressing their ugly faces against your home." The snake winked. Harry stared, mouth falling open. "Can you understand me?" The boa constrictor nodded, and something shifted in Harry's perception. He could almost feel the snake's frustration, its longing for the forests of Brazil it had never actually seen. "I know how you feel," Harry murmured. "I've never seen my parents' home either." Before the snake could respond, Dudley's shout shattered the moment. "Dad! Mom! Come look at this snake. You won't believe what it's doing." Dudley shoved Harry aside, sending him sprawling onto the concrete floor. Pain shot up from Harry's elbow, and something hot and electric surged through his body. The glass of the snake's enclosure vanished. Chaos erupted as the massive snake slithered out, hissing gratefully at Harry before making its escape. Visitors screamed and ran for the exits, while Dudley fell forward into the now empty enclosure, blubbering in terror. And then the glass reappeared, trapping Dudley inside. Uncle Vernon's face turned a dangerous shade of purple as he helped zoo staff rescue his terrified son. His eyes found Harry, still sitting on the floor, and narrowed with fury and something else, fear. "You," he growled, yanking Harry to his feet. "Car. Now." As Vernon dragged Harry through the panicking crowd, neither noticed the sleek silver car pulling into the zoo parking lot, nor the blonde girl who pressed her palm against the window, blue eyes wide with recognition. "He's here, maman," Fleur whispered. "He's in pain." The drive back to Privet Drive was filled with Vernon's threats, each more violent than the last. Harry huddled in the back seat next to a still sniffling Dudley, who shot him venomous glares between hiccups. "I don't know how you did it, boy," Vernon seethed, "but you'll wish you hadn't. No meals for a week. And I'm changing that lock on your cupboard." Harry said nothing. He had long learned that protests only made the punishments worse. Besides, something had changed inside him today. The surge of power he'd felt when the glass vanished wasn't entirely unfamiliar. Strange things had happened around him before, but this time, it felt more his. As though something dormant was slowly awakening. When they pulled into the driveway of number 4, Harry noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street, sleek and silver, with foreign license plates. A man in an elegant suit stood beside it, watching their arrival with unusual intensity. Vernon noticed too. "Who the blazes is that?" he muttered, his anger momentarily redirected. "Petunia, are you expecting anyone?" "Of course not," she snapped, but Harry caught the flicker of unease in her expression. As they exited the car, the stranger approached. His movements were graceful, almost predatory, and there was something about him that made even Vernon hesitate before puffing up his chest defensively. "Mr. and Mrs. Dursley," the man asked in a French accent. "My name is Sebastian Delicours. I wonder if I might have a word with you, and your nephew." Vernon's face flushed. "Now see here, it concerns Harry's parents," Sebastian continued smoothly. "And certain arrangements that were made after their passing." The color drained from Petunia's face. "Vernon, take Dudley inside," she hissed. "But Petunia, now." As Vernon reluctantly ushered a protesting Dudley through the front door, the car's back door opened. A woman emerged, stunning enough to make Harry blink in surprise, followed by a young girl about Harry's age with similar silver blonde hair and striking blue eyes. The girl carried a sleeping toddler in her arms. The moment the girl's eyes met Harry's, something extraordinary happened. A shimmering heat rushed through Harry's body, not painful but overwhelming, like stepping from a cold room into warm sunlight. The girl gasped, her free hand flying to her chest as though feeling the same sensation. "C'est Louis," she whispered. "It's him, maman." The woman, her mother, Harry assumed, nodded gravely. "Yes, Fleur. You were right." Petunia stepped between them and Harry, her thin frame vibrating with tension. "Whatever you want, you can't have him. He's our responsibility." "Is that what you call it?" Sebastian's voice was soft but dangerous. "Responsibility? You have no right, we have every right," the woman interrupted, her accent thicker than her husband's. "I am Apollon Delacour. Our daughter Fleur has been dreaming of your nephew for months." She fixed Petunia with a piercing stare. "Tell me, Mrs. Dursley, does Harry sleep in the cupboard under your stairs?" Harry felt his breath catch. How could they possibly know that? Petunia's face contorted. "That's none of your business. How dare you come here making accusations? It is not an accusation if it is true," Sebastian said. "And we have ways of knowing the truth." He turned to Harry, his expression softening. "Harry, has anyone ever told you about your parents? About what they truly were?" Before Harry could answer, Petunia grabbed his arm. "Stop this at once. I won't have you filling his head with that abnormal nonsense." "Abnormal?" Apollon's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Is that what you call magic, Mrs. Dursley? Is that what you've taught this child to call his heritage? Magic." The word echoed in Harry's mind like a bell ringing in an empty room. It made sense of so many things, the strange occurrences, the Dursleys' fear of anything unexplainable, their refusal to speak of his parents except in terms of disgust. "My parents had magic?" he asked, his voice small but steady. The girl, Fleur, stepped forward, still cradling the sleeping toddler. "They were a witch and wizard," she said in careful English. "Like my parents. Like me." She smiled, and something warm bloomed in Harry's chest. "And like you, Harry Potter." "That's enough." Petunia's shrill voice cut through the moment. "Get inside now, Harry." But Harry stood his ground, emboldened by the strange connection he felt with these strangers who somehow knew more about him than he did himself. "No," he said, surprising himself with his defiance. "I want to know about my parents. About magic." Sebastian placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. "And you deserve to know, mon garçon. But perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable. There are matters of great importance we must discuss." Petunia's face had gone chalky white. "If you think you can just take him, we have no intention of doing anything without proper procedure," Sebastian assured her, though his eyes hardened. "But I must warn you, Mrs. Dursley, that if what we suspect about Harry's living conditions is true, there will be serious consequences. Magical law takes a dim view of the mistreatment of magical children, particularly those of significant lineage." "Significant?" Petunia scoffed, though her voice trembled. "There was nothing significant about my freak of a sister or her good-for-nothing husband. Harry felt rather than saw Fleur step closer to him. Her presence was like a warm breeze, calming the storm of emotions churning inside him. "Perhaps we should ask Dumbledore about that assessment," Sebastian suggested mildly. The name had an immediate effect on Petunia. She flinched as though struck. "You know Dumbledore?" "We are acquainted with Albus Dumbledore, yes," Apollon said. "Though I doubt he would approve of how his arrangements have been implemented." A silent war played out on Petunia's face, fear battling with resentment, calculation with resignation. Finally, her shoulders sagged. "Fine. Come inside. But Vernon won't like this." As they followed Petunia toward the house, Fleur fell into step beside Harry. She shifted the sleeping toddler to one arm and, with her free hand, lightly touched Harry's wrist. "Do not be afraid," she whispered. "You are not alone anymore, Harry Potter." And for the first time in his young life, Harry believed it might be true. Vernon Dursley's face cycled through an impressive range of colors as Sebastian Delicours explained the situation. They sat in the Dursleys' immaculate living room, with Harry and Fleur perched side by side on an ottoman, the sleeping Gabrielle now in her mother's arms. "Preposterous," Vernon finally sputtered. "Magic? Veela? Prophecies? Do you take us for fools?" Sebastian smiled thinly. "I take you for precisely what you are, Mr. Dursley. Non-magical guardians who have failed spectacularly in their duty of care." "How dare, tell me," Apollon interrupted, her voice deceptively gentle, "why does Harry sleep in a cupboard while your son has 2 bedrooms?" Vernon's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Petunia cut in, "We never asked for him. He was dumped on our doorstep with nothing but a letter from Albus Dumbledore, yes?" Sebastian nodded. "Explaining about the blood protection, I assume. The magic that shields Harry while he lives with his mother's blood kin." Petunia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Something like that. And did this letter mention that the protection requires Harry to consider this place his home? That for the wards to function, he must feel safe and cared for?" The silence that followed was damning. Fleur, who had been watching Harry closely, suddenly stood. "May I see your cupboard, Harry?" All eyes turned to her. Harry hesitated, then nodded, ignoring his aunt's hissed protest. They moved to the hallway, where Harry reluctantly opened the small door beneath the stairs. Fleur's eyes widened at the sight of the cramped space, the thin mattress, the shelf of broken toys, the crude drawings pinned to the wall. She reached out, her fingers brushing against a spider web in the corner, then turned to her parents with fire in her eyes. "Il souffre ici," she said in rapid French. "The magic is wrong. Twisted. Can't you feel it?" Sebastian placed his hand against the door frame, closing his eyes briefly. The wards are weakening. They require love to maintain their strength, and there is precious little of that here." Vernon, who had followed them into the hallway, turned an even deeper shade of purple. "Now see here. We've clothed him, fed him, put a roof over his ungrateful head, you've treated him worse than a servant," Apollon cut in coldly. She turned to Harry, her expression softening. "Harry, would you like to gather your belongings? I think it would be best if you came with us for now." Harry's heart leapt. "Leave? With you? We cannot simply take the boy." Petunia protested. "Dumbledore said, we will contact Dumbledore," Sebastian assured her. "But our primary concern is Harry's well-being." He fixed Vernon with a steely gaze. "Unless you wish to explain to the authorities, magical and non-magical, why a 6-year-old boy bears signs of malnutrition and neglect." Vernon deflated visibly, tugging at his mustache in agitation. "Fine. Take him. But don't come crying to us when his freakishness becomes too much for you." Harry barely heard the adults continue arguing. His mind was spinning with possibilities. Leave the Dursleys. Go with these strange, magical people who seem to actually care about him. Fleur touched his arm, drawing his attention. It will be all right, Harry. We have been waiting for you. Why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why me? Her blue eyes seemed to glow slightly. Because you are special. More special than you know. She glanced toward his forehead, where his unruly hair partially covered the lightning-shaped scar. That is only part of who you are. Before Harry could ask what she meant, a loud crack sounded outside, like a car backfiring. All the adults tensed. Dumbledore, Petunia said, looking both relieved and anxious. That will be Dumbledore. Sebastian straightened his already immaculate suit. Sooner than expected. No matter. Harry, stay close to Fleur. This conversation may become complicated. The doorbell rang, and Vernon moved to answer it with obvious reluctance. A moment later, an elderly man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles stepped into the hallway. He wore what appeared to be a purple suit that somehow seemed both elegant and eccentric. His blue eyes swept the gathered company, pausing with obvious surprise on the Delicours before settling on Harry with an unreadable expression. Well, he said mildly, this is unexpected. Albus Dumbledore sat in Vernon Dursley's armchair as though it were a throne, accepting a grudgingly offered cup of tea from Petunia. His calm demeanor belied the tension crackling in the room. When my instruments indicated a disturbance in the blood wards, I must admit the Delacour family was not what I expected to find, he said, sipping his tea. Sebastian, Apollon, a pleasure, though the circumstances are unusual. And young Miss Delacour. He inclined his head toward Fleur, who sat protectively close to Harry on the sofa. I believe this is our first meeting. Professor Dumbledore, Sebastian acknowledged. We apologize for the unexpected nature of our visit, but certain magical developments required our immediate attention. Indeed? Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. And what developments might those be? Apollon and Sebastian exchanged glances. Fleur spoke up before either could respond. I have been dreaming of Harry, she said simply. 4 months. The ancient magic called to me. Dumbledore's bushy eyebrows rose fractionally. Ancient magic, you say? Fascinating. And what does this ancient magic tell you, Miss Delacour? Fleur lifted her chin. That Harry Potter is the Veela king of prophecy. The room went utterly still. Even the Dursleys, who understood little of the conversation's implications, sensed the momentous nature of the claim. After a long moment, Dumbledore set his teacup down carefully. That is, quite an assertion. It is not an assertion, Professor, Apollon said. It is a magical certainty. My daughter's Veela heritage has recognized Harry Potter. The signs are unmistakable. The Veela King prophecy is thousands of years old, Dumbledore countered gently. Many have searched for the one it describes, and none have found him. Until now, Sebastian said firmly. Harry, overwhelmed by the talk of prophecies and kings, finally found his voice. I don't understand. What's a Veela? What king? I'm just. Harry. Dumbledore's expression softened as he turned to the boy. Indeed you are, Harry. Just Harry. He gave the Delacours a pointed look. A boy who has already had one prophecy shape his life. Perhaps we should be cautious about introducing another. One prophecy. Sebastian leaned forward. You refer to the one concerning the Dark Lord, I presume. The reason this boy carries that scar. Harry's hand unconsciously rose to his forehead. My scar. What about it? Dumbledore sighed. Perhaps this conversation would be better continued elsewhere, and at a later time. Harry is quite young for such weighty matters. Too young to know his heritage, but not too young to be locked in a cupboard. Fleur asked, her childish voice carrying surprising authority. The temperature in the room seemed to rise several degrees. Dumbledore turned sharply toward the Dursleys. A cupboard? Vernon sputtered indignantly, but Petunia had the grace to look ashamed. We thought it best, she muttered. To keep his abnormality contained. I see. 2 simple words, but the chill in Dumbledore's voice made everyone flinch. He turned back to Harry. Is this true, my boy? They keep you in a cupboard? Harry nodded hesitantly, uncertain about the sudden focus on his sleeping arrangements. It's not so bad, he offered, a reflexive defense born from years of minimizing his own suffering. Fleur made a soft, distressed sound and took his hand. To everyone's surprise, a shimmering silver light briefly enveloped their joined hands before fading. Dumbledore's eyes widened. Most remarkable, he murmured. It seems, Sebastian, that your daughter's claim merits further investigation. He stood abruptly. I believe it would be best if we continued this discussion at Hogwarts. Harry's safety must remain our priority. We agree completely, Apollon said, also rising. Which is why Harry will be coming with us. Dumbledore's expression remained pleasant, but power seemed to gather around him like an invisible cloak. I'm afraid I cannot allow that. The blood protection is failing, Sebastian interrupted firmly. Surely you can sense it. These people. He gestured dismissively toward the Dursleys, have undermined the very foundation of Lily Potter's sacrifice through their treatment of her son. The protection requires that Harry call this place home, Apollon added. Tell me, Albus, does this feel like a home to you? Or a prison? Harry looked between the adults, feeling like a ping-pong ball in a heated match. Could I say something? He asked quietly. All eyes turned to him in surprise. I don't know about magic or prophecies or kings, he said carefully. But I know I've never been happy here. If there's somewhere else I could go, someone who might actually want me. His words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Dumbledore's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. I had hoped. He began, then shook his head. My intentions were to keep you safe, Harry. Perhaps I placed too much faith in family bonds. Blood isn't always thicker than water, Sebastian observed quietly. No, Dumbledore agreed. Evidently not. He studied the Delicours with new intensity. You understand, of course, that I cannot simply allow you to take Harry without certain assurances. The magical community would never accept it. We anticipated as much, Sebastian said smoothly. We are prepared to take magical vows regarding Harry's safety and well-being. Additionally, we propose a compromise. Harry will stay with us in France, but you will have visitation rights and input on his magical education. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. And what of Hogwarts? James and Lily would have wanted their son to attend their alma mater when the time comes. That will be Harry's choice, Apollon said firmly. When he is 11, he can decide whether to attend Hogwarts or Beauxbatons. The negotiation continued, with specific terms and magical protections discussed while Harry and Fleur listened in growing bewilderment. The Dursleys had retreated to the kitchen, clearly eager to be rid of the entire situation. Finally, Dumbledore turned to Harry. It seems, my boy, that you have a choice to make. Would you like to stay here, or go to France with the Delicours? Harry didn't hesitate. France, please, sir. Dumbledore nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. Very well. I will make the necessary arrangements. He pulled out what appeared to be a polished stick, a wand, Harry realized with a thrill, and waved it in a complex pattern. This will temporarily strengthen the existing protections while we prepare for your departure. A soft golden glow briefly surrounded the house, then faded. There is one more matter, Dumbledore said, fixing the Delicours with a penetrating stare. The prophecy you believe connects Harry to the Veela. I would hear it in full. Apollon nodded. In ancient times, when Veela were hunted by wizards for their feathers and hair, a seer among our kind foretold of a king who would unite our scattered tribes. Born of wizard blood but claimed by Veela magic, marked by lightning and tested by fire, he would build a bridge between our worlds and restore the old magics that were fading. His arrival would be heralded by a child of Veela blood who would recognize and guide him to his destiny. "And you believe Fleur is this herald?" Dumbledore asked. "I know I am," Fleur said simply. "Just as I know Harry is the king." Harry shook his head in disbelief. "But I'm not. I can't be a king. I'm not special." "Oh, but you are," Dumbledore said gently. "More than you know." The old wizard rose. "I must contact certain people about these developments. In the meantime, Harry should gather his belongings. I will return tomorrow to formalize the arrangements." As Dumbledore prepared to leave, he paused beside Harry, placing a weathered hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your parents would be proud of you, Harry. Never doubt that." He glanced at Fleur. "Sometimes destiny finds us in the most unexpected ways." With that cryptic statement and a swirl of his purple suit, Dumbledore departed, leaving Harry with the distinct feeling that his life had just irrevocably changed. The Delicours took Harry to a nearby hotel for the night, a modest but comfortable establishment where they had reserved a suite. After the emotional intensity of the day, Harry found himself overwhelmed by the simple luxury of having a real bed and a room that wasn't a cupboard. Fleur seemed equally overwhelmed, though for different reasons. The magical recognition that had occurred when they met had affected her deeply. Her mother explained that such recognition was rare and sacred in Veela tradition, a magical bond that transcended ordinary connections. "But I don't understand," Harry said as they sat in the hotel's dining room over dinner. "Why me? I'm nobody special." Sebastian smiled kindly. "Harry, surely you've noticed strange things happening around you when you're upset or frightened. Things you couldn't explain." Harry thought about the snake at the zoo, about Dudley's teacher's hair turning blue last year, about finding himself on the school roof when running from bullies. "That's magic." Apollon confirmed. "Magic that flows in your veins, just as it did in your parents." Lily and James Potter were exceptional witch and wizard. "They didn't die in a car crash, did they?" Harry asked quietly. A shadow passed over Sebastian's face. "No, mon garçon, they did not. They were murdered by a dark wizard, one who then tried to kill you as well." "But couldn't," Fleur added, her English careful but clear. "That is why you have the scar. That is why you are famous in our world." "Famous?" Harry's eyes widened. "Me?" "The boy who lived," Apollon said with a nod. "The only person ever to survive the killing curse." Harry's head spun with this information. "And now you're saying I'm some kind of Veela king too?" "The prophecy is very old," Sebastian explained. "Many believed it to be mere legend. But when Fleur began dreaming of you, I saw your cupboard," Fleur interrupted. "I saw how they treated you. I felt your pain." Her young face was solemn. "And I saw the crown of silver fire waiting for you." Little Gabrielle, who had been quietly playing with her food, suddenly looked up at Harry with wide blue eyes. "Roy," she exclaimed, one of her few clear words. "King." The word hung in the air, impossibly heavy for such a small sound. "We will not force this destiny upon you, Harry," Sebastian assured him. "What matters most is that you are safe, and that you have the childhood your parents would have wanted for you. With us," Apollon added, "you will learn about both your wizard heritage and the Veela traditions that have claimed you. You will have a proper home, proper clothes, proper food, and a proper family," Fleur finished with a shy smile. "A sister, if you want one." Harry felt something lodge in his throat. A family. It was all he'd ever wanted, the thing he'd wished for every night in his cupboard. He glanced at Gabrielle, who grinned at him toothily, then at Fleur, whose presence already felt like a warm hearth on a cold day. "I'd like that," he managed to say. Later, as Harry settled into a real bed in the sweet second bedroom, Fleur came to say goodnight. She sat on the edge of his bed, her silvery hair catching the dim light. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. Harry considered the question. "A little," he admitted. It's a lot to take in. Magic, and prophecies, and everything. She nodded. I was afraid too, when the dream started. But now I understand. What's it like? Harry asked. Being part Veela. Fleur tilted her head. It is like having a fire inside you that connects you to something ancient. Sometimes it burns bright, sometimes it sleeps. But it is always there. She hesitated. May I show you something? At Harry's nod, she held out her palm. Concentrating, she summoned a small ball of silvery blue flame that danced above her skin without burning. Harry gasped, instinctively reaching toward it. The moment his fingers touched the flame, it flared brilliantly, changing to a pure white tinged with emerald green. The light bathed their faces, casting strange, beautiful shadows across the room. The fire recognizes you, Fleur whispered, awe in her voice. Just as I did. The flame died away, leaving an afterimage burned into Harry's vision. Something had shifted inside him, a key turning in a lock he hadn't known existed. What happens now? He asked. Now we sleep, Fleur said practically, rising from the bed. Tomorrow, we go home to France. And then. She smiled, a hint of mischief lightening her serious demeanor. Then your real life begins, Harry Potter. As she left, Harry lay back against the pillows, trying to process everything that had happened. From a cupboard to a hotel suite, from unwanted burden to prophesied king, from loneliness to family. Whatever came next, Harry thought as sleep began to claim him, it had to be better than what came before. The following morning brought Albus Dumbledore back into their lives, this time accompanied by a severe-looking witch in emerald robes who was introduced as Professor Minerva McGonagall. Harry immediately liked her direct manner and the genuine concern that flashed across her face when she heard about his living conditions with the Dursleys. I told you they were the worst sort of muggles, she muttered to Dumbledore. Did I not say so the very night we left him there? You did indeed, Minerva, Dumbledore acknowledged with a weary sigh. An error in judgment I shall long regret. The formalities of transferring Harry's guardianship were complex, involving both magical and non-magical documentation. Sebastian explained that he had connections in both worlds that would smooth the process, though Dumbledore insisted on certain magical bindings to ensure Harry's continued protection. The blood wards will be impossible to replicate, Dumbledore explained as they gathered in the hotel suite sitting room. But there are other protections we can implement. The Fidelius charm, for instance, to conceal your residence in France. And I will become secret keeper? Sebastian asked. Dumbledore nodded. You or Apollon, yes. Additionally, I propose a series of monitoring charms that will alert us to any magical threats in Harry's vicinity. While the adults hammered out these details, Professor McGonagall sat with Harry and Fleur, answering their questions about the magical world. Harry was fascinated to learn about Hogwarts, the wizarding school where McGonagall taught transfiguration. Your parents were exceptional students, she told Harry, her stern features softening with nostalgia. Your father was particularly gifted in transfiguration, while your mother excelled at charms and potions. What's transfiguration? Harry asked. With a quick glance to ensure the muggles weren't watching, McGonagall drew her wand and transformed a teacup into a tiny bird that chirped once before she changed it back. The art of changing one thing into another, she explained as Harry and Fleur gaped in amazement. Will I learn to do that? Harry asked eagerly. In time, McGonagall assured him. Though your education may take a different path than we originally anticipated. She glanced at Fleur. Beauxbatons is an excellent school as well. My family has attended for generations, Fleur said proudly. But I think Harry should see Hogwarts too. It was his parents' school. McGonagall nodded approvingly. A wise perspective, Miss Delicour. She lowered her voice. This Veela King business. It's caused quite a stir already. The headmaster was up half the night consulting ancient texts and contacting certain experts. And Fleur asked intently. And it seems there may be substance to it. The timing of Harry's other destiny complicates matters, of course. Harry frowned. My other destiny? You mean the thing that gave me this? He pointed to his scar. McGonagall hesitated. It's not my place to explain fully, Mr. Potter. But yes, there are expectations placed upon you by our world. Burdens no child should have to bear. Her expression grew fierce. Which is why I, for one, am grateful you'll have years away from Britain's wizarding community to simply be a child. Before Harry could press for more details, the adults' conversation reached a conclusion. Dumbledore approached, holding what appeared to be ordinary papers in one hand and a roll of parchment in the other. It's all arranged, he announced. The Muggle, that is, non-magical, documentation shows the Delicours as Harry's legal guardians through a private adoption. The magical contract, he held up the parchment, is more comprehensive and includes the protective measures we've agreed upon. Sebastian and Apollon reviewed both sets of documents before signing. When they were finished, Dumbledore turned to Harry. There is one more step, my boy. A small ritual to transfer the remnants of your mother's protection to your new home. His eyes twinkled kindly. It won't hurt a bit, I promise. Dumbledore instructed Harry to stand in the center of the room. Fleur immediately moved to stand beside him, despite a questioning look from McGonagall. She should be part of this, Apollon explained. The Veela recognition is already forming a protective bond between them. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. Very well. Harry, Fleur, please join hands. As their fingers intertwined, that now familiar warmth spread up Harry's arm. Dumbledore began moving his wand in intricate patterns while chanting in Latin. McGonagall joined him, their wands weaving a complex dance of light around the children. A soft, golden glow emerged from Harry's chest, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. At the same time, a silver light emanated from Fleur, reaching out to merge with the gold. Where the lights combined, they formed a shimmering shield that expanded outward, briefly encompassing the entire room before fading into invisibility. Remarkable, McGonagall breathed. I've never seen such a reaction. The old magic recognizes its own, Dumbledore said enigmatically. It seems Lily's protection harmonizes with the Veela magic rather than conflicting with it. A fortuitous circumstance. Harry barely heard them. The sensation of the two magics merging had left him feeling both energized and oddly peaceful, as though something long out of alignment had finally clicked into place. Did you feel that? He whispered to Fleur. She nodded, her eyes bright. It was like coming home. Coming home. The words resonated within Harry, filling a void he hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. He had never had a true home, never belonged anywhere or to anyone. Now, in the space of 2 days, he had found not only a family but a magical heritage that seemed to claim him as its own. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever prophecies or destinies awaited him, Harry Potter was no longer facing them alone. The journey to France passed in a blur of new experiences for Harry. From the Eurostar train to Paris, to the enchanted car ride to the Delicour family estate in Provence, each moment brought fresh wonders. Fleur pointed out magical landmarks invisible to non-magical travelers, a grove of trees where wood nymphs danced at twilight, a riverside cafe frequented by mere people in human disguise, a cloud formation that was actually a dragon sanctuary under a complex concealment charm. Little Gabrielle alternated between napping and demanding Harry's attention with imperious babbling. Though he couldn't understand her words, her delight in his presence was unmistakable, and Harry found himself naturally falling into the role of honorary big brother. The Delicour estate appeared at first glance to be a modest country home nestled among lavender fields and vineyards. As they drew closer, however, Harry realized it was much larger than it seemed, with wings and towers that somehow became visible only as you approached them directly. Muggle-repelling charms, Sebastian explained, noticing Harry's wonderment. The house appears as a simple farmhouse to non-magical eyes. Even magical visitors see only portions of it unless specifically invited to view the whole. The interior was a harmonious blend of wizard and Veela aesthetics, moving portraits alongside delicate silver artifacts that hummed with power, ancient tomes sharing shelf space with what appeared to be feathers encased in crystal. Windows captured sunlight in impossible ways, creating patterns on the floors and walls that shifted throughout the day. Harry's bedroom, his very own bedroom, was a spacious chamber with a four-poster bed, a desk beneath a window overlooking the lavender fields, and empty bookshelves waiting to be filled with his own possessions. "Is it to your liking?" Apollon asked as Harry stood speechless in the doorway. It's the most beautiful room I've ever seen," he managed. "It's yours now," she said simply. "To decorate as you wish. Tomorrow we will go shopping for proper clothes and anything else you need." That first night in France, after a dinner that introduced Harry to French cuisine, which he approached cautiously but found delicious, the Delicours gathered in a circular room at the heart of the house. The walls were lined with silver mirrors that reflected not the room's occupants but scenes from distant places, forests, mountains, beaches, city streets. "The Veela scrying chamber," Apollon explained as Harry stared in fascination. "A sacred space where we connect with our heritage and perform certain rituals." She gestured for Harry to sit in the center of a mosaic floor depicting a phoenix rising from flames. "Tonight, we formally welcome you to our family and begin the process of awakening your connection to the Veela magic that has claimed you." Fleur sat opposite Harry, with Sebastian, Apollon, and Gabrielle forming a circle around them. Sebastian produced a small silver knife and a shallow stone bowl. "A single drop of blood from each of us," he explained, seeing Harry's nervous expression. "It's painless, I promise, and necessary for the ritual. Blood freely given is powerful magic, different entirely from blood taken by force." One by one, they each pricked a finger and allowed a drop of blood to fall into the bowl. When it was Harry's turn, he hesitated only briefly before extending his hand. The knife's touch was so quick and precise he barely felt it. As his blood joined the others, the mixture in the bowl began to glow with a pearlescent light. Apollon lifted the bowl and spoke in a language Harry didn't recognize, flowing and musical, with words that seemed to shimmer in the air. She dipped her finger into the glowing mixture and drew a symbol on Harry's forehead, careful to avoid his scar. The liquid felt cool at first, then warm, then seemed to sink beneath his skin entirely. "From this day forward," she said in English, "you are blood of our blood, magic of our magic. Not born to us, but chosen by us and by the ancient powers that guide our kind." A surge of magic pulsed through the room. The mirrors lining the walls briefly showed the same image, a boy with messy black hair and a lightning scar, standing tall with a crown of silver fire floating above his head. "The mirrors recognize you," Fleur whispered excitedly. "They show the truth of what is and what will be." Harry felt something stir deep within him, a power different from the accidental magic he had experienced before. This was focused, purposeful, as though responding to a call only it could hear. Without thinking, he raised his hand toward the nearest mirror. A tendril of silver-green fire erupted from his palm, dancing across the reflective surface. The image shifted, showing an older version of Harry standing beside an older Fleur, both emanating an aura of power that commanded respect. "The future is not fixed," Sebastian said quietly as the image faded. "What the mirrors show is potential, not certainty. Your choices will shape the path ahead." "But the prophecy," Harry began, "is a framework, not a prison," Apollon finished for him. "You are not just the Veela king or the boy who lived, Harry. You are, first and foremost, yourself." Harry looked around at the faces of his new family, Sebastian's quiet strength, Apollon's regal grace, Gabrielle's innocent curiosity, and Fleur's unwavering belief in him. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen for who he was rather than what others wanted him to be. "Thank you," he said, the simple words inadequate for the emotion behind them. "For finding me. For bringing me home." "We didn't find you, Harry Potter," Fleur corrected gently. "The magic led me to you. It knew we belonged together, all of us." As the ritual concluded, Harry felt another piece of himself falling into place. The orphan in the cupboard was beginning to fade, replaced by a child with purpose and belonging. Whatever lay ahead, whatever challenges his dual destiny might bring, he would face them with a family by his side. The Veela King prophecy remained mysterious, its full implications yet to be revealed. But as Harry drifted off to sleep that night in his new bedroom, surrounded by the protective magic of his new home, one thing was certain: the lonely days of Privet Drive were behind him forever. A new chapter had begun, not just for Harry Potter, but for the magical world that would one day feel the impact of the path set in motion when a young Veela girl followed her dreams to a cupboard under the stairs. Chapter 2, The Awakening. The silver fire danced across Harry Potter's palm, casting ethereal light through the meditation chamber. 5 years had transformed the frightened boy from Privet Drive into a confident 11-year-old whose magic flowed as naturally as breath. With eyes closed in concentration, he shaped the Veela flame into intricate patterns: a phoenix, a dragon, finally a crown that hovered above his upturned hand. Magnifique! Fleur's voice broke his concentration, and the fiery crown dissolved into harmless sparks. At 14, she had grown into her Veela heritage beautifully, her silver blonde hair cascading down her back, her movements graceful and sure. "You've mastered the third form already." Harry grinned, pushing his perpetually messy hair from his eyes. The lightning scar remained, though it had faded slightly over the years. "I had an excellent teacher." "You had a patient teacher," she corrected, settling beside him on the meditation cushions. "There's a difference." The circular chamber, with its domed ceiling painted to reflect the night sky, had become Harry's favorite place in the Delicours estate. Here, he had learned to connect with the ancient Veela magic that had claimed him, so different from the wizarding magic he studied with Sebastian, yet complementary in ways that still surprised him. "Any word from Dumbledore?" Harry asked, stretching his legs. They had grown considerably in the past year, though he remained smaller than most boys his age, a lasting gift from the Dursleys' neglect. Fleur nodded. "Papa received an owl this morning. Your Hogwarts letter has arrived, along with one from Beauxbatons." She tilted her head, studying him. "Have you decided?" Harry sighed, a weight settling on his shoulders. "Not yet. It's not exactly a simple choice, is it?" The decision had been looming for months. As his 11th birthday approached, Harry faced the monumental task of choosing between Hogwarts, his parents' school, where his British heritage and boy-who-lived status would precede him, and Beauxbatons, where the Delicours had studied for generations, and where his Veela magic would be better understood. "It isn't," Fleur agreed. "But you don't have to decide alone. The entire family supports whatever choice you make." Family. The word still warmed Harry from within. For 5 years, the Delicours had been everything the Dursleys were not: loving, supportive, patient with his mistakes, and celebratory of his successes. Sebastian had become the father figure he'd never had, teaching him magical theory, history, and practical spellwork. Apollon had immersed him in Veela culture, helping him understand the ancient magic that had recognized him. Fleur had been his guide and closest friend, while 8-year-old Gabrielle had appointed herself his most enthusiastic cheerleader. A knock at the chamber door interrupted his thoughts. Gabrielle bounded in, her silver blonde hair flying behind her. "Harry! Come quick! Visitors from England," she announced in rapid French before darting back out. Harry and Fleur exchanged glances. "Dumbledore?" Harry guessed. "Perhaps," Fleur replied, rising gracefully. "Though Papa said the headmaster wouldn't arrive until tomorrow." Curious, they made their way through the east wing of the manor, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. As they neared the grand salon, they heard Sebastian's voice, courteous but cool. "Understand your concern, Minister, but I must emphasize that Harry's educational decisions remain with him and his guardians." Harry paused at the doorway, Fleur beside him. Inside the salon stood Sebastian, his posture diplomatically rigid, facing a portly man in a pinstriped suit and lime-green bowler hat. Beside this stranger stood a woman dressed entirely in pink, with a smile that reminded Harry unsettlingly of a predator. "Ah! The man spotted Harry and beamed broadly. Here he is. Harry Potter, at last. Sebastian turned, his expression warning Harry to be cautious. Harry, Fleur, allow me to introduce Cornelius Fudge, the British Minister for Magic, and his senior undersecretary, Dolores Umbridge. They've come to discuss your upcoming school year. Harry stepped forward, offering his hand as Sebastian had taught him. A pleasure to meet you, Minister. Fudge pumped Harry's hand enthusiastically. My dear boy. Look at you, the spitting image of your father, though you have your mother's eyes, of course. Everyone says so. His gaze flickered to Harry's forehead. And the scar, yes, remarkable, truly remarkable. Minister, Sebastian interjected smoothly, perhaps we should all sit down. Yes, of course, Fudge adjusted his bowler hat nervously. The pink-clad woman, Umbridge, had yet to speak, but her gaze fixed on Harry with an intensity that made him instinctively move closer to Fleur. As they settled into the elegant chairs arranged around the salon, Harry felt a protective heat emanate from Fleur. Her Veela instincts clearly distrusted these visitors. Where is Apollon? Fudge inquired, looking around the room. My wife is attending a gathering of the Veela Council, Sebastian replied. A matter of some importance has arisen among the clans. Something flickered across Fudge's face, concern, perhaps, or calculation. I see. Well, perhaps that's for the best. Our business concerns wizarding matters, after all. Harry felt a spark of irritation. Madame Delicours has been instrumental in my magical education, Minister. I consider her guidance in wizarding matters invaluable. Fudge blinked, clearly surprised by Harry's direct response. Of course, my boy, of course. I meant no offense. Hem. Umbridge cleared her throat delicately. Minister, perhaps we should address the purpose of our visit? Ah, yes. Fudge straightened. Harry, my boy, we've come with wonderful news. The Ministry has made special arrangements for your return to Britain and enrollment at Hogwarts. A proper homecoming for the boy who lived. Harry exchanged glances with Sebastian. That's very thoughtful, Minister, but I haven't decided yet whether I'll attend Hogwarts or Beauxbatons. Fudge's smile faltered. Not decided. But surely. I mean to say, Hogwarts is where you belong, Harry. Your parents' legacy, Britain's premier magical institution, both schools have their merits, Sebastian interjected. Harry is considering his options carefully. Hem. Umbridge leaned forward, her voice girlishly sweet yet somehow cold. Forgive me, but there may be some confusion here. Mr. Potter is a British citizen and the heir to a most ancient and noble house. His attendance at Hogwarts is not merely tradition but a matter of national importance. Harry felt his temper rising but kept his expression neutral, as Apollon had taught him. I wasn't aware my education had become a matter of state, Madam Umbridge. Oh, but you're not just any student, are you, Mr. Potter? Umbridge's smile widened. You're a symbol to the wizarding community of Britain. The boy who lived, returning to take his rightful place. My rightful place? Harry repeated, a dangerous edge to his voice. Beneath his skin, he felt the Veela fire stirring, responding to his emotions. 5 years of training helped him contain it, but just barely. Fleur placed a calming hand on his arm, her touch immediately soothing the fire within. Harry has many responsibilities to consider, she said in perfect English. Including those to his Veela heritage. Umbridge's smile vanished. His what? Fudge shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, we've heard some rumors about that. Fascinating cultural exchange, I'm sure, living with a family with Veela ancestry. Broadens the horizons and all that. It's not a cultural exchange, Minister, Harry said firmly. The Veela magic recognized me. I'm as much Veela as I am wizard now. A heavy silence fell over the room. Fudge looked utterly bewildered, while Umbridge's expression had turned to one of poorly disguised disgust. Preposterous, she finally said. Veela are classified as magical beings, not wizards. Their magic is entirely different. A wizard cannot be recognized by creature magic. Harry felt Fleur tense beside him. The term creature was deeply offensive to Veela, who considered themselves one of the ancient magical races predating human wizardry. Perhaps, Sebastian suggested diplomatically, you might benefit from speaking with Apollon when she returns. The history of Veela magic is complex and often misunderstood by the wizarding community. That won't be necessary, Fudge said hastily. Whatever cultural practices Harry has been exposed to, the fact remains that as Britain's most famous magical orphan, his return to his homeland is eagerly anticipated. I am home, Minister, Harry said quietly. The Delicours are my family now. Fudge's face fell. Now see here, Harry, Monsieur Potter, Sebastian corrected gently. In this house, we use formal address until invited otherwise. Fudge flushed red. Yes, well. Monsieur Potter, then. Surely you understand that your place is at Hogwarts. The entire British wizarding world expects it. The Ministry has made special arrangements, security protocols, press events. Harry interrupted, alarmed. Of course. Your return is cause for celebration. The Daily Prophet has planned a special edition, and there's talk of a reception at the Ministry before term begins. The public has waited 10 years to welcome back their hero. Harry felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This was exactly what Sebastian and Apollon had warned might happen, people who saw him only as the boy who lived, a symbol to be paraded and used for political gain. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Minister, Harry said carefully, but I value my privacy. I'm not interested in press events or public receptions. Umbridge Simper had returned. I'm afraid you misunderstand, Mr. Potter. These arrangements aren't requests. The Ministry has determined that your high profile requires certain management. For your own safety, of course. Sebastian's expression hardened. Are you suggesting, Madam Umbridge, that the British Ministry intends to dictate terms to my ward? Because I assure you, the international magical accords are quite clear on the rights of magical guardians, regardless of national borders. Fudge raised his hands placatingly. No one is dictating anything. We're simply ensuring a smooth transition for Harry's return. After all, his situation is quite unique. Indeed it is, came a new voice from the doorway. Though perhaps not in the way you imagine, Cornelius. Albus Dumbledore stood framed in the arched entrance to the salon, resplendent in midnight blue robes spangled with silver stars. Behind him, Apollon Delacour's expression was thunderous. Dumbledore. Fudge sputtered. What are you? We weren't expecting, clearly. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, though his smile didn't reach them. I received an urgent message from Apollon that the British Minister for Magic had arrived unannounced at her home. Naturally, I was concerned. There was no need, Fudge began. There was every need, Apollon interrupted, moving to stand behind Harry and Fleur, a protective hand on each of their shoulders. Arriving uninvited to discuss my son's future without my presence is not only discourteous but borders on a diplomatic incident. Your son. Umbridge's voice dripped with disdain. Mr. Potter is a ward of the British Ministry, temporarily placed in foreign care. His status, Dumbledore interjected mildly, was legally established 5 years ago, with the full knowledge and approval of the International Confederation of Wizards. The Delicours are Harry's legal guardians in both magical and muggle law. He peered at Fudge over his half-moon spectacles. I'm certain the minister is aware of this, having signed the authorization himself. Fudge's face flushed deeper. That was before, I mean to say, circumstances have changed. The public interest does not override Harry's best interests, Sebastian finished firmly. Nor does it negate our legal authority as his guardians. Harry watched the adults' verbal sparring with growing unease. For 5 years, his life in France had been peaceful, sheltered from the fame that apparently still followed him in Britain. Now, as his 11th birthday approached, that protective bubble seemed to be cracking. Perhaps, Dumbledore suggested, we might all benefit from hearing Harry's own thoughts. After all, it is his future we're discussing. All eyes turned to Harry. The weight of their expectations, their differing hopes for his path, pressed down on him like a physical force. He felt Fleur's reassuring presence beside him and drew strength from it. I appreciate everyone's concern, he began carefully, but this decision isn't about satisfying the British public or fulfilling anyone's expectations. It's about what's best for my education and development. He looked directly at Fudge. I understand that people in Britain may have certain ideas about the boy who lived, but I'm not a symbol or a political asset. I'm just, me. Well said, Harry, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. But surely you feel some obligation to the wizarding world that has celebrated you all these years? Fudge pressed. Some sense of duty to your homeland? Harry felt a flash of irritation. My homeland is where my family is, Minister. And my obligation is to use my magic responsibly, regardless of which school teaches me. He hesitated, then added, as for being celebrated, I was left in a cupboard for 6 years while Britain celebrated me. Forgive me if I'm not eager to return to that particular spotlight. Fudge recoiled as if slapped. Umbridge's face contorted with barely suppressed anger. Apollon squeezed Harry's shoulder in silent support. I haven't made my decision yet, Harry continued more gently, seeing Fudge's distress. I'll consider Hogwarts carefully, along with Beauxbatons. But I'll make that choice based on what's right for me, not what's convenient for the ministry or expected by the public. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Dumbledore broke it with a light chuckle. I believe Harry has made his position admirably clear, he said. And as headmaster of Hogwarts, I can assure you, Cornelius, that should Harry choose to attend, he will be treated as any other student, with respect for his privacy and concern for his educational needs. Fudge looked deflated. Yes, well. I suppose that's reasonable. He stood abruptly. We should be going. Much to do at the ministry, you understand. Of course, Sebastian rose as well. We appreciate your interest in Harry's welfare. The pointed pause was not lost on anyone. As the British officials prepared to depart, Umbridge paused beside Harry, her voice lowered to a whisper only he could hear. This isn't over, Mr. Potter. Britain has ways of reclaiming what belongs to it. Before Harry could respond, she followed Fudge to the Fleur connection in the adjacent room. Moments later, green flames announced their departure. Well, Dumbledore said into the sudden quiet, that was bracing. He turned to Harry with a genuine smile. You've grown into quite the young diplomat, Harry. Your parents would be proud. Thank you, Professor, Harry replied, relaxing slightly. Despite their sometimes complicated relationship, he had grown to respect the elderly wizard over the years. Dumbledore's periodic visits had provided insights into his parents' lives and his own unique magical situation that no one else could offer. I apologize for arriving a day early, Dumbledore continued, but it seems fortunate that I did. Cornelius has become increasingly political in his decision-making lately. He wants to use Harry, Fleur said bluntly. To boost his popularity. Precisely, Miss Delicour. Dumbledore nodded. The minister's position has been somewhat precarious this past year. Several policies have proven unpopular, and having the boy who lived visibly supporting the ministry would be quite the coup. He won't get the chance, Apollon said firmly. Harry is not a political pawn. Indeed not, Dumbledore agreed. Though I fear this visit may be just the beginning. Now that Harry's education is imminent, many will seek to influence his path. Sebastian frowned thoughtfully. Perhaps we should accelerate our security measures. The wards are strong, but if the ministry has taken an active interest. A wise precaution, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though I believe today's encounter may have temporarily discouraged Cornelius, Madame Umbridge is not so easily deterred. He turned to Harry. Which brings us to the matter at hand, your schooling. Have you given it further thought? Harry sighed. Every day. But today's visit didn't exactly make Hogwarts more appealing. Understandable, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Though I would remind you that the Ministry's influence at Hogwarts is limited. As headmaster, I can promise you certain accommodations for your unique situation. My Veela magic, you mean? Among other things, Dumbledore nodded. Hogwarts has educated students with dual magical heritages before, though admittedly none quite like yours. What sort of accommodations? Fleur asked, her protective instincts evident. Private quarters, for one, Dumbledore replied. The typical dormitory arrangement might prove challenging, given the unpredictable nature of emerging Veela abilities. Additionally, I would propose weekly sessions with Professor Flitwick, who has some experience with non-human magical traditions. Harry appreciated the offer but felt a twinge of unease at being treated differently from other students. It was exactly what he'd hoped to avoid, special treatment that would set him apart. And what of the prophecy? Apollon asked quietly. The Veela clans have become increasingly restless as Harry's 11th year approaches. They believe the time of recognition is at hand. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. Yes, I've heard whispers from the Veela communities in Eastern Europe. The ancient texts suggest that the king's powers will fully manifest at the threshold of magical maturity. That's why the education decision is so complex, Sebastian explained to Harry. Beauxbatons has stronger connections to the Veela clans and better understands their magic. But Hogwarts. Hogwarts has resources related to Voldemort and the prophecy that led to your parents' deaths, Dumbledore finished quietly. Resources that may become necessary as you grow older. Harry felt the familiar weight of his dual destiny pressing down. For 5 years, he had balanced his development as both wizard and Veela, learning the traditions of both worlds. But now, it seemed, a choice was required, one that might tip the scales in one direction or the other. I need more time, he said finally. You have until the end of July, Dumbledore assured him. Though after today's events, I would counsel against delaying too long. It seems others are making plans regardless of your decision. We won't let them interfere, Fleur said fiercely, taking Harry's hand. No matter what you choose. Harry squeezed her hand gratefully. Throughout the upheavals of his young life, Fleur had been his constant, the one who had found him, who understood both sides of his nature, who never saw him as either a celebrity or a prophecy, but simply as Harry. As the adults continued discussing security measures, Harry's mind drifted to the Veela prophecy that had shaped the last 5 years of his life. According to the ancient texts Apollon had shown him, the Veela king would unite the scattered clans and restore their waning magic, bridging the gap between the Veela and wizard worlds that had grown wider over centuries. Such a destiny might have seemed absurdly grandiose to the boy in the cupboard under the stairs. But after 5 years of witnessing the reality of his unique connection to Veela magic, the silver fire that responded to his call, the strange abilities that manifested during heightened emotions, the instinctive understanding of their ancient language, Harry had come to accept that there might be truth to the prophecy after all. What he couldn't reconcile was how this destiny intersected with his role as the boy who lived. How could he be both the savior of wizarding Britain and the prophesied king of the Veela? And more immediately, how could he choose an education that honored both paths? Harry. Apollon's voice broke through his thoughts. Are you all right? He blinked, realizing the conversation around him had paused. Sorry, just thinking. Perhaps that's enough serious discussion for one day, Sebastian suggested. Harry, why don't you and Fleur show the headmaster the progress you've made with your wandless magic? I believe he'll be quite impressed. Grateful for the change of subject, Harry nodded. Of course. Professor, would you like to see the training room? As they made their way through the manor, Harry felt a small measure of the tension easing from his shoulders. Whatever choice he made about his education, whatever challenges lay ahead from the British ministry or elsewhere, he had something the boy in the cupboard never had, people who saw him for who he truly was, and who would stand beside him regardless of his path. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity to the Delicours estate. After the unexpected visit from the British minister, Sebastian doubled the property's security measures, adding layers of ancient Veela wards to complement the standard wizarding protections. Harry divided his time between practicing magic, studying the prospectuses from both Hogwarts and Beauxbatons, and long walks through the lavender fields with Fleur, discussing the pros and cons of each school. Beauxbatons understands Veela better, Harry mused as they sat beneath an olive tree, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. But Hogwarts was my parents' school. Fleur plucked a stem of lavender, twirling it between her fingers. You're thinking like a wizard now, she observed. Weighing practical considerations. What does your Veela instinct tell you? Harry closed his eyes, allowing his other magical sense to surface. Over the years, he had learned to distinguish between his wizard's and Veela's intuition, the former analytical and specific, the latter emotional and encompassing. It's confused, he admitted. There's a pull toward Hogwarts, but also danger. Beauxbatons feels safer, but... He shrugged. Less right, somehow. The prophecy said the king would build bridges between worlds, Fleur reminded him. Perhaps neither path alone is correct. What do you mean? Fleur's blue eyes sparkled with an idea. Why must you choose one school exclusively? The magical education accords allow for exchange programs. What if you proposed splitting your time? Harry sat up straighter. Is that possible? For ordinary students, rarely. But you are hardly ordinary, mon cher Harry. She smiled. And Madame Maxime and Professor Dumbledore both want you at their schools. Perhaps they would compromise to share you. The idea took root in Harry's mind, growing more appealing the more he considered it. A dual education that honored both aspects of his heritage, it felt right in a way neither single option had. That evening, he presented the idea to Sebastian and Apollon over dinner. Ingenious, Sebastian declared after a thoughtful pause. Diplomatically sound and educationally comprehensive. The logistics would be complex, Apollon cautioned. And there's the matter of your Veela training. The recognition ceremonies traditionally begin at 11. Could they be adapted? Harry asked. Perhaps concentrated during the periods I'm at Beauxbatons. Apollon considered this. It's unprecedented, but so is your entire situation. I'll consult with the Veela Council. She smiled warmly at her adopted son. This solution honors both sides of your heritage, Harry. I believe it could work. 2 days later, Dumbledore returned to discuss the proposal. To Harry's relief, the headmaster seemed intrigued rather than offended by the idea of sharing his education. A term at each school, alternating throughout the year, Dumbledore mused, stroking his beard. Academically challenging, certainly, but for a mind like yours, Harry, perhaps ideally stimulating. And it neatly sidesteps the political complications of choosing one nation's institution over another. You think Hogwarts would accept such an arrangement? Sebastian asked. The Board of Governors might raise objections, but they can be managed, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Especially if presented as an opportunity to strengthen international magical cooperation. The ministry would find it difficult to oppose on those grounds. And Madame Maxime? Harry asked, referring to Beauxbaton's formidable headmistress. Already amenable to the idea, Apollon confirmed. I spoke with her yesterday. She sees it as an opportunity to showcase Beauxbaton's progressive approach to magical education. And so it was decided. Harry would begin his magical education at Hogwarts for the first term, transfer to Beauxbatons after the winter holidays, then return to Hogwarts for the final term. Summers and holidays would be spent at the Delicours estate, where his Veela training would continue. With his educational future settled, Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. There remained, however, one significant milestone before his departure for Hogwarts, his 11th birthday, which the Veela texts identified as the day of recognition, when his connection to Veela magic would fully manifest. The preparations for this ceremony consumed the Delicours household in the final weeks of July. Ancient texts were consulted, sacred items retrieved from family vaults, and invitations sent to Veela clan representatives from across Europe. Even Gabrielle, normally excluded from serious magical affairs due to her age, was assigned important ritual duties. 3 days before Harry's birthday, the first Veela delegates began to arrive. Unlike the stereotypical images perpetuated in wizarding society, the clan leaders were not uniformly young and beautiful women. They ranged from ethereal maidens to regal matrons to silver-haired elders, each carrying the distinct aura of Veela magic that Harry had learned to recognize. Most welcomed him warmly, curious about the wizard child who had been recognized by their ancient magic. A few, however, regarded him with obvious skepticism. "He looks ordinary enough," remarked Lysandra, the austere leader of the Carpathian clan, as she circled Harry in the grand salon. "Where is the mark of the ancient fire?" "It manifests when needed," Apollon replied smoothly. "Harry, would you demonstrate?" With a nod, Harry extended his hand, calling forth the silver flame that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. The fire danced across his palm, brighter and more controlled than it had been even a month ago, shifting from silver to green to white and back again. Lysandra's eyes widened slightly. Impressive control for one so young, she conceded. But control alone doesn't prove the prophecy. Many half-bloods can call the fire. "Show her the recognition, Harry," Fleur encouraged quietly. Taking a deep breath, Harry closed his eyes, reaching for the deeper current of Veela magic that Apollon had taught him to access. This was more challenging, not simply calling fire, but connecting to the ancient power that had recognized him 5 years ago. The temperature in the room rose perceptibly. When Harry opened his eyes, they glowed with an inner light that reflected the fire now encircling his head in a floating crown. Lysandra took an involuntary step back. Several other clan leaders murmured in their native tongue, the musical Veela language that Harry now understood as easily as French or English. "The crown of silver fire," Lysandra whispered. Just as the prophecy foretold. Harry maintained the manifestation for several more seconds before allowing it to fade, the effort leaving him slightly breathless. Though his control had improved dramatically over the years, the more advanced Veela magic still taxed his developing core. "He grows stronger daily," Apollon said with quiet pride. "The full recognition ceremony will complete the connection." "If he survives it," Lysandra replied bluntly. "The ritual was designed for those born to Veela blood. No pure wizard has ever attempted it." "I'm not entirely wizard anymore," Harry pointed out. "The magic changed me when it recognized me." Lysandra studied him with newfound interest. "Yes, I suppose it did. We shall see how much when the ancient fire truly tests you." The cryptic warning lingered in Harry's mind as preparations continued. Though the Delicours had described the recognition ceremony in general terms, he sensed they were withholding certain details, perhaps to avoid frightening him unnecessarily. On the eve of his birthday, as delegates from the final clans arrived, Harry sought out Fleur in her favorite spot, the small rooftop garden where magical plants from around the world grew in harmonious profusion. "There you are," he said, finding her tending to a cluster of moonflowers that opened their silvery blooms to her touch. "Everyone's looking for you downstairs. The Bulgarian delegates just arrived." Fleur didn't turn around. "Let them wait." Something in her voice made Harry pause. Moving closer, he realized her shoulders were shaking slightly. "Fleur. What's wrong?" She finally faced him, her blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I overheard Lysandra and the others talking about tomorrow's ceremony." She took a shuddering breath. "Harry, it's dangerous. More dangerous than Maman and Papa have admitted." A chill ran through him despite the warm evening air. "How dangerous?" "The ancient fire will test you completely, not just your magic, but your very essence. Your worthiness." Her voice dropped to a whisper. Some candidates don't survive the judgment. Harry absorbed this information with surprising calmness. Perhaps some part of him had always known that claiming his Veela heritage wouldn't be without risk. Why didn't your parents tell me? They believed the risk was minimal for you, since the magic chose you already. Fleur reached for his hand. But the full recognition is different from what happened when we met. This is formal. Binding. And if I don't go through with it? Harry asked, though he already knew the answer. The connection would remain incomplete. Your Veela magic might eventually fade or become unstable. Her fingers tightened around his. But that would be better than losing you entirely. Harry considered this, watching the moonflowers glow in the gathering twilight. For 5 years, his Veela magic had been as much a part of him as his wizard's abilities, perhaps more so, since it had come with the family that saved him from the Dursleys. The thought of losing that connection felt like contemplating the amputation of a limb. I have to do this, Fleur, he said quietly. Not because of the prophecy, but because it's part of who I am now. Who I've chosen to be. I knew you would say that. Fleur's smile was sad but proud. So brave, mon petit roi. My little king. Her childhood nickname for him brought a lump to his throat. Will you be there? During the ceremony? Fleur nodded. I'm your herald. The one who found you. My role is essential. She hesitated. There's something else. Something I'm supposed to give you on the morning of your birthday, before the ceremony. From a pocket in her robes, she withdrew a small velvet pouch. Traditionally, it should wait until tomorrow, but... She pressed it into his hand. I want you to have it now. For courage. Harry opened the pouch and tipped its contents into his palm. A pendant on a silver chain, a teardrop of crystal that seemed to contain living fire, swirling in perpetual motion. It's beautiful, he breathed. What is it? A Veela heartstone. They form rarely, only when a Veela sacrifices a portion of their inner fire to create one. She touched the pendant gently. This is from my fire, Harry. I created it last full moon. Harry stared at her in shock. You gave up part of your magic. For me. A small part, she shrugged, though the gesture couldn't hide the significance of her gift. During the ceremony, it will help anchor you to our world if the ancient fire becomes overwhelming. Deeply moved, Harry slipped the chain over his head. The pendant settled against his chest, warm and comforting, pulsing slightly in time with his heartbeat. Thank you, he said simply, knowing no words could adequately express what the gift meant to him. Fleur leaned forward and kissed his forehead, just beside his scar. Sleep well, Harry. Tomorrow you truly become one of us. Harry's 11th birthday dawned clear and bright, the Provençal sky an unblemished blue that promised perfect weather for the ceremony scheduled for midday. He woke early, the pendant warm against his skin, already sensing that this day would change his life as profoundly as the day Fleur had found him in Little Whinging. Breakfast was a subdued affair. Even Gabrielle seemed to understand the gravity of the occasion, her usual chatter replaced by solemn attention to the ritual preparations. She had been tasked with carrying the ceremonial chalice, a duty typically reserved for the youngest female member of the host family. Are you ready, Harry? Sebastian asked as they finished eating. Harry nodded, surprised to find he felt more curiosity than fear. As ready as I can be, I think. Good. Sebastian produced a long, narrow box from his robes. Before we proceed, Apollon and I have a gift for you. Something to mark both your birthday and your dual heritage. Inside the box lay a wand unlike any Harry had seen in wizarding catalogs or shops. Made of pale wood with a subtle silver sheen, its surface was etched with delicate patterns that seemed to shift as he looked at them. Aspen wood, Apollon explained as Harry lifted it reverently. Excellent for dueling and particularly responsive to Veela magic. The core is unique, a feather freely given by a Veela in her fire form, combined with a phoenix tail feather. A bridge between worlds, Harry murmured, feeling the wand warm to his touch. Just like the prophecy. Precisely, Sebastian smiled. Most wand makers refuse to work with Veela feathers, too temperamental, they claim. But Gregorovich in Bulgaria understood what we needed. A wand that would channel both aspects of your magic harmoniously. Harry gave the wand an experimental wave. A shower of silver and gold sparks erupted from its tip, dancing around the room before resolving into the shape of a phoenix that flew once around their heads before dissolving into mist. "It's perfect," he whispered. "Thank you. You'll need it for the ceremony," Apollon said. "And for the journey ahead. Speaking of which." She checked the ornate clock on the dining room wall. "It's time to prepare. The delegates will gather in the sacred grove at noon." The next hours passed in a blur of ritual preparations. Harry was bathed in waters infused with magical herbs, dressed in ceremonial robes of silver and white, and adorned with ancient Veela symbols painted on his skin with a brush dipped in a potion that shimmered with an inner light. Throughout it all, he clung to the sense of rightness that had settled over him since accepting this path. Whatever happened in the ceremony, he was no longer the unwanted boy from the cupboard. He was Harry Potter Delicours, wizard and Veela, claimed by a family and a heritage that had chosen him as surely as he had chosen them. At precisely noon, Fleur came to escort him to the grove. She too wore ceremonial robes, though hers were the pale blue of a summer sky rather than Harry's silver white. "It's time," she said, her expression solemn yet encouraging. "Remember what Maman taught you about the stages of the ritual." Harry nodded, mentally reviewing the complex ceremony. First would come the presentation, where he would be introduced to the assembled clans. Then the invocation, calling upon the ancient fire to judge his worthiness. Finally, the recognition itself, the most mysterious and potentially dangerous part of the ritual, where the fire would either accept or reject him fully. "I remember," he assured her. "And I have your heartstone." He touched the pendant beneath his robes. "I'll be fine." "Of course you will." She offered her arm formally. "Shall we, my king?" The sacred grove lay a quarter-mile from the main house, in a secluded valley accessible only by a path that wound through ancient olive trees. As Harry and Fleur approached, he felt the magic in the air thickening, pressing against his skin like the heaviness before a thunderstorm. The grove itself was a perfect circle of silver birch trees, their leaves rustling despite the absence of wind. At its center stood a raised stone dais, upon which burned a fire unlike any Harry had seen before, silver white, like Veela flame, yet somehow older, wilder, more primal. Around the circle stood the representatives of every Veela clan in Europe, nearly 50 in all, their combined magical aura creating a shimmering haze in the air. Sebastian and Apollon waited at the edge of the circle, with Gabrielle beside them, solemnly holding the ceremonial chalice. As Harry entered the grove, a hush fell over the assembly. Fleur led him forward until they stood at the edge of the stone dais, then stepped back to join her parents. Lysandra, as the eldest clan leader present, stepped forward to begin the ceremony. "We gather under the open sky," she intoned in the musical Veela language, "to witness the recognition of one claimed by the ancient fire. Harry James Potter, son of wizard blood, found and heralded by Fleur Isabel Delacour of the Mediterranean clan, stepped forward and be presented to the fire." Harry ascended the 3 stone steps to the dais, feeling the heat of the silver flames intensify with each step. When he reached the top, he stood facing the assembly, his back to the ancient fire. Lysandra continued, her voice carrying effortlessly across the grove. "For 5,000 years, since the first Veela emerged from the union of elemental fire and mortal flesh, we have awaited the one prophesied to unite our scattered kindred. The king who would bridge worlds divided, restore magics forgotten, and lead us into a new age of harmony between all magical beings." She fixed Harry with her penetrating gaze. "Many have sought this mantle. None have been worthy. Until now, perhaps." Apollon stepped forward, carrying a silver basin filled with clear liquid that reflected the sky above. "Who vouches for this candidate?" Lysandra asked formally. I, Apollon Delicour, daughter of Yvain, daughter of Celestine, matriarch of the Mediterranean clan, vouch for Harry Potter, Apollon replied. I have taught him our ways, our history, our magic. I have watched him grow in wisdom and power. I present him for recognition. And I, Fleur stepped beside her mother, Fleur Delacour, herald of the prophecy, vouch for Harry Potter. The ancient fire guided me to him when he was but a child. I have watched him overcome darkness with light, fear with courage, loneliness with love. I present him for recognition. One by one, representatives from each clan approached, dipping their fingers into the silver basin and sprinkling droplets onto the stone at Harry's feet. Some offered words of encouragement, others simply nodded solemnly, but all participated in the ritual, even those who had expressed skepticism about his candidacy. When the last droplet had been offered, Lysandra raised her arms. The presentation is complete. Let the invocation begin. This was the part Harry had practiced for months, a complex incantation in ancient Veela that would call forth his connection to their magic. Taking a deep breath, he began the chant, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his stomach. As the words flowed from his lips, the silver fire behind him responded, flaring higher with each phrase. The heat against his back intensified, but rather than discomfort, Harry felt a growing sense of rightness, of coming home. The final words of the incantation hung in the air like crystallized sound. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the ancient fire surged upward in a column of blinding light. Turn and face your judgment, Lysandra commanded. Harry turned slowly, facing the pillar of silver flame that now towered 20 feet above the dais. This was the moment of greatest danger, the recognition itself. According to the ancient texts, the fire would search his soul, judging his worthiness not just for Veela magic, but for the specific destiny outlined in the prophecy. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped forward, directly into the flames. Fire engulfed him instantly, swirling around his body in a cocoon of silver-white heat. Strangely, it didn't burn, instead, it seemed to sink beneath his skin, racing through his veins like liquid light. Images flashed through his mind faster than he could process, his mother's face as she stood between him and Voldemort. The cupboard under the stairs. Fleur finding him at the Dursleys. Sebastian teaching him his first spell. Apollon guiding his first manifestation of Veela fire. Gabrielle's laughter as she chased him through lavender fields. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes as they discussed his dual education. The fire probed deeper, beyond memories into the very essence of who he was, his fears, his hopes, his capacity for both love and power. It felt like being turned inside out, every aspect of his being exposed and examined. Then came the questions, not in words but in pure sensation. Why do you seek this power? Not for myself, Harry thought fiercely. To protect those I love. To unite what has been divided. To be worthy of the family that chose me. Would you sacrifice for those under your protection? Without hesitation. Even your life? Yes. Even your magic? A harder question, but... yes. If necessary. What makes you worthy to lead those older and wiser than yourself? I don't presume to be worthy yet, Harry answered honestly. I have much to learn. But I will listen, grow, and honor the traditions while helping them evolve. The questioning continued, each probe more challenging than the last, testing not just his answers but the truth behind them. Harry felt himself weakening, the intensity of the fire's examination draining his strength. Fleur's heartstone burned against his chest, anchoring him to the physical world as the fire threatened to consume his consciousness entirely. Just when he thought he could endure no more, the fire's tenor changed. The interrogation ceased, replaced by a sensation of approval, acceptance. The silver flames condensed, focusing into a spinning vortex that centered on Harry's chest, directly over his heart. With a final surge of magic that drew gasps from the watching assembly, the ancient fire plunged into Harry's body, merging with his magical core in a blinding flash of light. For one terrifying moment, Harry felt his heart stop. His lungs seized, his vision darkened, and he knew with absolute certainty that he stood at the threshold between life and death. Then Fleur's heartstone pulsed once, powerfully, and his body responded in kind. His heart restarted with a lurch, his lungs expanded in a desperate gasp, and the world rushed back into focus with almost painful clarity. Harry stood in the center of the dais, the ancient fire apparently gone, or rather, internalized. His skin glowed from within, illuminated by silver light that traced patterns along his veins. Above his head floated a crown of silver flame, no longer a temporary manifestation but a permanent symbol of his new status. "The fire has accepted him," Lysandra announced, her voice filled with wonder. "The king is recognized." A sound like rushing wind filled the grove as every Veela present extended their arms, palms upward in the traditional gesture of acceptance. From each palm sprang a small silver flame that rose into the air, joining together above the assembly in a spectacular dome of light that encompassed the entire grove. Sebastian and Apollon ascended the dais, followed by Fleur and Gabrielle. Apollon carried a small silver diadem, not to replace the crown of fire, which would fade from visibility when not needed, but as a physical symbol of his status among the Veela. "Kneel, Harry Potter," she said formally. Harry knelt, his legs surprisingly steady despite the magical ordeal he had just endured. He felt different, more complete somehow, as though a space within him that had been partially filled for 5 years was now brimming with power and purpose. "With the blessing of the ancient fire and the witness of all clans," Apollon continued, "I crown you Harry James Potter Delacour, King of the Veela, Guardian of the Eternal Flame, Bridge between Worlds." She placed the diadem on his head, where it settled naturally among his unruly black hair. The moment it touched him, Harry felt a surge of connection to every Veela present, not mind-reading exactly, but a profound awareness of their presence, their emotions, their needs. "Rise and be recognized," Apollon commanded. As Harry stood, Gabrielle stepped forward, offering the ceremonial chalice. It contained a potion that glowed with the same silver light now coursing through Harry's veins, the essence of recognition, brewed from freely given Veela tears and rare magical herbs. "Drink," Lysandra instructed, "and complete the bond." Harry lifted the heavy chalice to his lips and drank. The liquid tasted of fire and starlight, of ancient magic and new beginnings. As it coursed through him, the glow beneath his skin intensified briefly before settling into a subtle luminescence that would mark him, to those with eyes to see, as Veela royalty forevermore. "It is done," Lysandra announced. "The prophecy is fulfilled. The king has returned to us." A cheer rose from the assembled clans, a sound of pure jubilation that seemed to make the very air vibrate with magical energy. Harry felt their acceptance, their hope, their sudden fierce loyalty flooding through the newly established bond. Fleur was the first to bow formally, followed by her parents and sister, then Lysandra, and each clan representative in turn. The gesture made Harry profoundly uncomfortable. These were his family, his teachers, his elders in Veela tradition. He shouldn't be receiving their obeisance. "Please," he said, his voice carrying unexpected authority, "stand with me, not before me." Something in his tone made them comply immediately. Fleur rose, her eyes shining with pride and unshed tears. "The first command of a true king," she whispered. "To elevate rather than dominate." The formalities continued with a feast laid out on long tables that appeared at the edge of the grove. Harry found himself seated at the head table between Apollon and Lysandra, receiving formal greetings from each clan representative while trying to adjust to the profound changes wrought by the recognition ceremony. His magical senses had sharpened dramatically. He could feel the distinct signature of each person present, taste the different flavors of their magic on the air. More significantly, he could sense their connections to one another, the invisible threads of kinship, alliance, and occasional rivalry that bound the Veela community together. "It's overwhelming," he confided to Fleur when she joined him after the formal presentations concluded. "I can feel everything." "It will settle," she assured him. "The recognition heightens all Veela senses for the first few days. You'll learn to filter the input. And this? He gestured to the subtle glow still visible beneath his skin. That will fade to invisibility except when you call upon your power, she explained. Though those with Veela blood will always sense your presence, even from a distance. Harry nodded, processing this new reality. He was different now, not just symbolically or politically, but magically altered at a fundamental level. The recognition had completed the transformation begun 5 years ago when Fleur first found him, fully integrating the Veela magic with his wizard's core. As the celebration continued into the evening, Harry found a moment of quiet with Sebastian and Apollon, away from the curious eyes of the visiting clans. "How do you feel?" Sebastian asked gently. "Changed," Harry answered honestly. "But in a good way, I think. More balanced." Apollon nodded in understanding. "The dual nature of your magic has fully harmonized. Before today, you were a wizard with Veela abilities. Now you are truly both, in perfect equilibrium. Does this change our plans?" Harry asked. "About Hogwarts and Beau's batons?" "That remains your choice," Sebastian assured him. "Though I suspect your experience at Hogwarts will be interesting, given your new status." Harry groaned softly. As if being the boy who lived wasn't enough attention. Then a thought struck him. Will they be able to tell? The students and professors at Hogwarts? Those with creature blood might sense something unusual about you, Apollon admitted. But without direct experience with Veela magic, they likely won't understand what they're sensing. That's something, at least. Harry sighed. I just want to be normal for once. Sebastian chuckled. My dear boy, you have never been normal. Even before Fleur found you, even before Voldemort marked you, you were extraordinary. The sooner you accept that reality, the easier your path will be. Before Harry could respond, a commotion at the edge of the grove drew their attention. A latecomer had arrived, a tall, elegant woman with white gold hair and eyes of such a pale blue they appeared almost silver in the twilight. Though she wore traveling clothes rather than ceremonial robes, her regal bearing and the deferent way the guards treated her suggested someone of great importance. Seraphina, Apollon breathed in surprise. I didn't expect her to come. Who? Harry asked, watching as the mysterious woman made her way through the crowd, which parted before her like water around a stone. Seraphina Valerian, Sebastian explained in a low voice. The oracle of the eastern clans. She rarely leaves her sanctuary in the Carpathian mountains. An oracle? Like a seer? More than that, Apollon said. The oracle preserves the oldest Veela prophecies and interprets their fulfillment. Her presence at your recognition is significant. The woman approached their small group, her ethereal beauty unmarred by the evident fatigue of long travel. She bowed deeply to Harry, a gesture that seemed even more meaningful given her obvious status. My king, she said in a voice like wind through crystal chimes. I come too late for the ceremony, but not, I hope, for the blessing. You are welcome, Oracle, Harry replied, instinctively using the formal cadence he had learned for Veela rituals. Your presence honors us. A smile touched Seraphina's lips. Well spoken. May I? She gestured toward his forehead. At Harry's nod, she placed cool fingertips against his temples. Her touch sent a shiver of ancient magic through him, different from the fire of the recognition but no less powerful. I see the paths before you, she murmured, her eyes going distant. Many and winding, all fraught with both peril and promise. Her expression shifted subtly. The Dark One stirs in his half-life, sensing the shift in magic this day has wrought. He will seek you with renewed purpose. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Voldemort? Seraphina nodded solemnly. His destiny remains entangled with yours, young king. But now you face him not just as the wizard child who survived his curse, but as sovereign of an ancient race whose magic predates his kind by millennia. She released him, her eyes refocusing on the present. You have chosen a difficult path, dividing your education between worlds. It is fitting. The prophecy speaks of a bridge, after all. Her gaze shifted to Fleur. And you, Herald, will you continue to guide him? Fleur straightened. Of course. My magic is bound to his. More than you know, Seraphina said cryptically. Watch for the sign of the golden flame. When it appears, your own destiny will fully awaken. With these enigmatic words, the oracle turned back to Harry. A gift, my king, to mark this day. From within her robes, she produced a small object wrapped in silk. Harry accepted it curiously. Unwrapping the silk revealed a ring of strange, silvery metal set with a stone that appeared black until it caught the light, then it revealed depths of blue and purple like the night sky. This belonged to the last Veela sovereign, 2,000 years ago, Seraphina explained. It is attuned to our oldest magics and will serve as both protection and focus for your emerging abilities. Harry slipped the ring onto his right hand, where it resized itself perfectly to his finger. Immediately, he felt his connection to the Veela magic sharpen, becoming more precise and controllable. Thank you, he said, genuinely moved by the historical significance of the gift. Seraphina inclined her head. Use it well. The days ahead will test not just your power, but your wisdom. She glanced toward the darkening sky. Change comes to our world, and to the wizards. Ancient boundaries blur. Old enemies seek new alliances. And you, young king, stand at the crossroads of it all. With that ominous pronouncement, the oracle moved away to greet Lysandra and the other clan leaders, leaving Harry with a growing sense that his life had just become significantly more complicated. Well, Sebastian said after a moment, it seems your adventures are just beginning. Harry looked down at the ancient ring on his finger, then touched the heartstone Fleur had given him, still warm against his chest. Finally, his hand moved to the wand in his pocket, the symbol of his wizard heritage. 3 gifts, 3 aspects of his identity, 3 paths converging into one uncertain future. I'm ready, he said with more confidence than he felt. Whatever comes next. Fleur slipped her hand into his, her touch reassuring. Not alone, Harry. Never alone. And in that moment, surrounded by family both old and new, Harry believed her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dark forces stirred, whatever political machinations awaited, whatever tests his dual nature would face, he would meet them with the strength of both his heritages and the love of those who had chosen him. The boy from the cupboard was gone forever. In his place stood Harry Potter Delicours, wizard of extraordinary potential, king of an ancient magical race, and bridge between worlds long divided. His 11th birthday had changed everything, again. But this time, the change felt right. Inevitable. As though he had finally stepped fully into the person he was always meant to be. The weeks following Harry's recognition ceremony were a whirlwind of preparation for his departure to Hogwarts. News of his dual education arrangement had been met with mixed reactions, enthusiastic approval from Dumbledore, grudging acceptance from the British Ministry, and considerable interest from the international magical community. The Daily Prophet had published a speculative piece titled, "The Boy Who Lived Returns," part-time, that contained just enough accurate information to be concerning. Someone leaked the arrangement. Sebastian frowned over breakfast one morning, scanning the newspaper. Though they don't mention the Veela connection, thankfully. Small mercies, Apollon replied. How much longer before that particular aspect becomes public? Not long, I fear, Sebastian sighed. Especially once Harry is at Hogwarts. The British magical community is insular, but not blind. His aura alone will raise questions among those sensitive to such things. Harry, who had been listening while pretending to focus on his toast, looked up. Is it that obvious? To those with eyes to see, yes, Apollon confirmed gently. Your magical signature has changed fundamentally since the recognition. Most wizards won't notice beyond sensing you're unusually powerful, but those with creature blood or training in magical detection will perceive the difference. Wonderful, Harry muttered. As if being the boy who lived wasn't enough to make me a curiosity. Fleur, sitting beside him, nudged his shoulder playfully. Consider it preparation for your eventual public role. A king can hardly remain anonymous forever. I suppose not, Harry conceded. But I'd hoped for at least one normal year at school before dealing with all that. He gestured vaguely to encompass the prophecies, political implications, and general complexity of his situation. Sebastian folded the newspaper with a sympathetic smile. Focus on the fundamentals, Harry. You're going to school to learn magic, make friends, and experience the world beyond our protection. The rest will unfold in its own time. Easy for him to say, Harry thought. Sebastian wasn't the one heading into Britain's premier magical institution with a target painted on his back and a secret magical heritage that could upend Wizarding Society's rigid categorization of beings and wizards. Still, as the day of departure approached, Harry found himself growing excited despite his concerns. Hogwarts represented a connection to his birth parents, a chance to understand the world they had inhabited. More practically, it offered magical instruction in areas complementary to what he had already learned from the Delicours. 2 days before Harry was scheduled to leave for London, where he would meet the Hogwarts Express like any other student, per Dumbledore's suggestion, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Delicour estate. Harry was practicing advanced wand work with Sebastian in the training room when Gabrielle burst in, eyes wide with excitement. Harry! There's a giant in the front garden. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. A giant? Well, not a real giant, Gabrielle amended. But the biggest man I've ever seen. With a huge beard and tiny eyes. Maman says he's here for Harry. Ah, Sebastian smiled in understanding. That would be Rubeus Hagrid, I believe. Dumbledore mentioned sending someone to escort you to London. Harry brightened. He had heard stories about Hagrid from both Dumbledore and Sebastian, the gentle half-giant who had been unfailingly kind to his parents during their Hogwarts years, and who had reportedly been the one to rescue him from the ruins of his parents' home after Voldemort's attack. They found Hagrid in the Manor's receiving room, looking comically oversized in a chair designed for normal humans. His massive frame seemed to fill half the space, but his expression was so genuinely warm that his imposing size became almost immediately irrelevant. Harry! Hagrid boomed, standing as they entered. Look at ya! Last time I saw ya was just a tiny baby. And now? His beetle-black eyes grew suspiciously bright. Ya look just like your dad, but with my mother's eyes, Harry finished with a smile. So I've heard. Right ya are, Hagrid beamed, then turned to Sebastian. Monsieur Delicours, sir. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. Professor Dumbledore sent me to escort young Harry here to London, if that's agreeable. Perfectly, Sebastian nodded, shaking Hagrid's enormous hand. Though we had planned to accompany Harry ourselves, of course. Oh, course, Hagrid agreed hastily. The whole family's welcome. Professor Dumbledore just thought, what with Harry being somewhat famous and all, might be good to have someone from Hogwarts along. For, crowd control, if ye take my meaning. Harry hadn't considered that aspect, that his arrival in London might attract unwanted attention. The thought of facing a crowd of strangers eager to gawk at the famous boy who lived made his stomach twist uncomfortably. That's very thoughtful, Apollon said, entering the room with Fleur. We accept your assistance gratefully, Mr. Hagrid. Just Hagrid, ma'am, the giant said, clearly awed by Apollon's Veela beauty despite her age. Everyone calls me Hagrid. Introductions complete, they settled into planning the journey. Hagrid had arrived via international portkey, but the return trip would be more conventional, the Delicours' enchanted car to Paris, then the Eurostar train to London, where they would stay overnight before heading to King's Cross Station the following morning. Got your school supplies all ready, have ye? Hagrid asked as Apollon arranged for refreshments. Harry nodded. Most of them. Sebastian took me to Diagon Alley last month. It had been an educational experience, his first exposure to British wizarding society, complete with whispers and stares when people recognized him. But we still need to visit Ollivander's, Sebastian added. Harry has a wand, but Professor Dumbledore suggested having one crafted by Ollivander as well, given the unique nature of his magic. Hagrid looked momentarily confused by this reference to unique magic, but nodded agreeably. Ollivander's the best, no mistake. We can stop by his shop tomorrow after we reach London. As they continued discussing arrangements, Harry observed Hagrid carefully. The half-giant's warmth and sincerity were immediately apparent, but Harry's enhanced Veela senses detected something else, a subtle magical signature that marked Hagrid as someone with mixed heritage, not unlike Harry himself. "You're part giant, aren't you?" Harry asked suddenly, his curiosity overriding his manners. Hagrid stiffened momentarily, a flash of wariness crossing his face before he composed himself. That I am. On me mother's side. Not something I generally advertise, mind ya. I didn't mean to pry, Harry apologized, realizing he'd touched on a sensitive subject. I just sensed it somehow. Hagrid studied him with new interest. Sensed it, did ya? That's unusual in a wizard your age. His gaze moved thoughtfully between Harry and the Delicours. Unless that wizard has some special abilities of his own, Fleur finished, exchanging glances with her parents. Sebastian sighed. Hagrid, what we're about to share is not widely known outside certain circles. We trust you'll be discreet. Oh, course, Hagrid nodded solemnly. Dumbledore trusts me with his secrets, he does. And so, with Apollin's approval, they explained the basics of Harry's Veela heritage and recent recognition. Hagrid listened with increasing wonder, his expressive face cycling through surprise, confusion, and finally understanding. Blimey, he breathed when they finished. A Veela king? That's something, that is. He peered at Harry with new respect. No wonder Dumbledore's been so mysterious about these past years. The boy who lived in some sort of Veela royalty. It's not something I want generally known at Hogwarts, Harry said quickly. At least not right away. I'd rather people get to know me as just Harry first. Hagrid's bushy beard twitched with a sympathetic smile. Don't blame ya one bit. Hard enough bein' famous for something can't even remember. This just add fuel to the fire. He mimed locking his lips. Your secret's safe with me, Harry. Though I should warn ya do have a certain glow about ya now. Might be noticeable to some. We've been working on controlling that, Apollon assured him. By the time Harry reaches Hogwarts, only those with particular sensitivity to magical auras should detect anything unusual. The conversation gradually turned to lighter topics, Hagrid's magical creatures, Harry's education thus far, and stories about Harry's parents during their Hogwarts years. By the time Hagrid departed to his accommodations in the guest cottage, Harry felt he'd made his first real friend from the British wizarding world. The following morning brought organized chaos as the family prepared for travel. Trunks were packed and repacked, last-minute items remembered and added, and tearful goodbyes exchanged with household staff who had become extended family over the years. Gabrielle was particularly emotional, clinging to Harry as though he might disappear forever rather than return for Christmas in just a few months. You'll write every week, she demanded, her blue eyes swimming with tears. Twice a week, Harry promised, hugging her tightly. And I'll bring you something special from Hogwarts at Christmas. Not a toilet seat, Sebastian said dryly from across the room, where he was shrinking Harry's trunk for easier transport. Despite whatever suggestions you might receive from fellow students. Harry grinned. Sebastian's stories about the notorious Privet twins, who had attended Hogwarts during his occasional diplomatic visits, had become family favorites over the years. Finally, with everything packed and everyone dressed in their finest Muggle attire, to avoid attention during the Eurostar journey, the family plus Hagrid squeezed into the magically expanded car and set off for Paris. The journey passed pleasantly, with Hagrid entertaining them with increasingly improbable tales of the magical creatures he'd encountered. By the time they reached London, even Gabrielle had forgotten her sadness, enchanted by stories of dragons and hippogriffs. Their first stop was Ollivander's, where the ancient wand-maker received them with unsettling intensity, his silvery eyes lingering on Harry's forehead before drifting to his right hand, where the oracle's ring rested, invisible to non-Veela eyes. "Curious," Ollivander murmured. "Very curious indeed." He circled Harry slowly. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Potter, though the magic you bring with you is unexpected." Harry exchanged glances with Fleur. Clearly, Ollivander sensed something of his dual nature, though whether the wand-maker fully understood what he was perceiving remained unclear. "I already have a wand," Harry explained, withdrawing the aspen and dual-core creation from Gregorovitch. "But Professor Dumbledore suggested I might benefit from one of yours as well." Ollivander took the offered wand, examining it with professional interest. "Gregorovitch's work. Excellent craftsmanship, if somewhat flamboyant for my taste." He handed it back reverently. "And unusual cores." "Very unusual indeed." "Can you make a wand that will complement it?" Sebastian asked. "Something specifically attuned to Harry's wizard heritage?" "Perhaps." Ollivander's eyes gleamed with the challenge. "Let us see what chooses you, Mr. Potter." What followed was an hour of increasingly frustrated attempts with various wands. Each seemed to respond partially to Harry's magic before rejecting him, or being rejected by him, it wasn't entirely clear which. "Fascinating," Ollivander muttered after the 20th failure. "Your magic has been claimed, Mr. Potter. It resists forming a new bond." He disappeared into the shadowy depths of his shop, returning moments later with a dusty box. "Perhaps, yes, perhaps this one." He opened the box to reveal a wand of warm holly wood. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. A powerful combination. The moment Harry's fingers closed around it, he felt a surge of warmth unlike any of the previous attempts. It wasn't the perfect harmony he experienced with his aspen wand, but it was a definite connection, like meeting a distant relative rather than a stranger. Golden sparks shot from its tip, illuminating the dusty shop. "Curious," Ollivander whispered. "Very curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, already suspecting he wouldn't like the answer. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." A chill ran through Harry. "You mean Voldemort's wand?" Ollivander flinched at the name but nodded. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think it is clear that we can expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." The wand-maker's words cast a pall over what should have been an exciting purchase. As they left the shop, Holly wand securely boxed alongside his primary aspen one, Harry found himself brooding over this unexpected connection to his parents' murderer. "Don't let it trouble you overmuch," Sebastian advised gently as they made their way to the leaky cauldron for lunch. "Wand lore is complex and often ambiguous. The connection may be meaningful, but not necessarily in the way Ollivander implied. Besides," Fleur added, "you are more than your wizard magic now. The Veela in you changes the equation entirely." Hagrid, who had waited outside the wand shop due to its cramped interior, noticed Harry's subdued mood immediately. "Everything all right?" "Ollivander can be a bit intense, but he's the best there is." "I'm fine," Harry assured him, not wanting to discuss the wand connection in public. "Just nervous about tomorrow, I guess." This was partially true. Despite his extensive magical education with the Delicours, Harry had never attended a formal school. The prospect of being surrounded by hundreds of students, many of whom would know his name and history before he'd even introduced himself, was daunting. Their afternoon was spent gathering the last few items on Harry's school list and exploring Diagon Alley. Harry found himself particularly drawn to quality Quidditch supplies, where the latest racing broom, a Nimbus 2000, was drawing admiring crowds. "Your father was an exceptional Quidditch player," Apollon remarked, watching Harry's fascination with the broom. "A chaser, primarily, though he could play any position in a pinch." "First years aren't allowed their own brooms," Hagrid reminded them regretfully. "Though exceptions have been made in the past for exceptional talent." "Perhaps at Christmas," Sebastian suggested, noting Harry's poorly concealed longing. "After you've had some flying lessons at Hogwarts." The evening found them settled in comfortable rooms above the leaky cauldron. After dinner, as the family gathered in the Delicours suite for a quiet evening, Hagrid presented Harry with a surprising gift. "Meant to give ya this earlier," the half-giant said, producing a somewhat squashed box from one of his many pockets. "Baked it myself. Words might be a bit smudged." Inside was a large chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday Harry" written in green icing. Though his birthday had been weeks ago, the thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Harry deeply. "Thank you, Hagrid," he said sincerely. "This is really kind of you." "Ah, well," Hagrid looked embarrassed but pleased. "Wanted ya to have summit from me, seeing as I missed all them birthdays before." As they shared the cake, which was surprisingly good, despite its appearance, Harry felt a complex mixture of emotions: excitement for the adventure ahead, gratitude for the family surrounding him, and a growing determination to balance his dual heritage in the challenging environment of Hogwarts. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter, one that would test not just his magical abilities, but his identity itself. The boy who lived would return to Britain, but hidden beneath that famous persona was something the wizarding world had never encountered before: a Veela king walking among them in the guise of an ordinary student. As Harry drifted off to sleep that night, Fleur's heartstone warm against his chest and the oracle's ring solid on his finger, he made a silent promise to himself. Whatever challenges Hogwarts might bring, he would face them with the courage of a Gryffindor, the wisdom of a Ravenclaw, the loyalty of a Hufflepuff, and the ambition of a Slytherin. Not just as Harry Potter, boy who lived, or as the Veela king of prophecy, but as the sum of both inheritances, a bridge between worlds, just as the prophecy foretold. Chapter 3, The Coronation. The silver fire erupted from Harry's palms, shooting 20 feet into the night sky before transforming into the shape of a massive phoenix. With a gesture, the 14-year-old sent the fiery construct soaring across the Mediterranean coast, its light reflecting off the dark waters below. Another motion of his hands and the phoenix dissolved, reforming as a pride of lions that raced along the shoreline before dissipating into the summer air. "Show off," Fleur teased, sitting cross-legged on a large rock nearby. At 17, she had grown into her Veela heritage magnificently, her silver blonde hair cascading down her back like liquid moonlight. "Though I must admit, your control has improved." Harry grinned, dropping onto the sand beside her rock. 3 years of splitting my education between Hogwarts and Beauxbatons will do that." He flexed his fingers, watching the last traces of silver fire dance across his skin before fading. "Still, something's different lately. The fire comes more easily, but it's harder to contain. Like it's growing beyond what I can channel." Fleur's expression turned serious. "The ancient texts speak of this. As the Veela king approaches his 15th year, his connection to the ancient fire deepens." She slid down from her perch to sit beside him. "The elders believe it's time, Harry. For the formal coronation." Harry sighed, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. The past 3 years had changed him significantly. He had grown taller, though still lean rather than bulky, and his features had sharpened into a striking blend of James Potter's aristocratic lines and Lily's expressive eyes. The lightning scar remained, though it seemed to have faded slightly. Less visible were the magical changes, the increasingly powerful wizard core complemented and enhanced by his maturing Veela abilities. "I thought my 11th birthday ceremony was the coronation," he said. "That was the recognition," Fleur corrected gently. "The acknowledgement of your status. The coronation is different." More profound. It formally binds you to all Veela magic, past and present. And conveniently happens right as Voldemort appears to be making his move, Harry added dryly. The darkness in his tone was earned. His first 3 years at Hogwarts had been anything but the normal education he'd hoped for. From the Philosopher's Stone incident in his first year to the Chamber of Secrets in his second and the revelation of his godfather Sirius Black in his third, trouble seemed to find Harry Potter regardless of which magical school he attended. The timing isn't coincidental, Fleur acknowledged. The Veela seers believe the two events are connected. As your power grows, it disturbs the dormant darkness. Harry picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the calm water. Dumbledore thinks the same thing. The protective magic my mother left when she died interacts with the Veela magic in ways nobody fully understands. He glanced at the Heartstone pendant that hadn't left his neck in 3 years. It's all connected somehow, my mother's sacrifice, the Veela recognition, Voldemort's defeat. The summer night wrapped around them, warm and fragrant with the scent of the Mediterranean herbs that grew wild along the Delicours estate's coastal boundary. In the distance, the lights of the manor glowed softly, a reminder of the family that had changed Harry's life irrevocably since that fateful day at the Dursleys. The delegation from the eastern clans arrives tomorrow, Fleur said after a comfortable silence. They're bringing the ceremonial artifacts for the coronation. And Seraphina? Will she be there? The Oracle? Of course. She wouldn't miss this. Fleur hesitated. She's been having visions, Harry. About you and, about us. Harry turned to look at her, catching something new in her voice. They had always been close, the herald and her king, bound by magic and shared experience, but lately, something had been shifting between them. A new awareness, heightened whenever they practiced magic together. What kind of visions? Before Fleur could answer, a silvery light appeared on the path leading down from the house, Apollin's Patronus, a graceful swan. It's time to return, the Patronus announced in Apollin's voice. Our guests from Britain have arrived. Harry stood, brushing sand from his clothes. Dumbledore's early. Not just Dumbledore, Fleur reminded him. Sirius will be with him. A smile broke across Harry's face. His godfather's exoneration the previous month, thanks to the capture of Peter Pettigrew during the dramatic events at Hogwarts, had been one of the few bright spots in an increasingly tense summer. Though still recovering from his years in Azkaban, Sirius had insisted on being present for what he called James and Lily's son's big royal moment. As they walked back to the house, Harry reflected on how thoroughly his dual education had shaped him. At Hogwarts, he had found friendship with Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, connections to his parents' world, and repeated confrontations with the legacy of Voldemort. At Beauxbatons, he had deepened his understanding of international magic, formed alliances with students from across Europe, and continued his Veela training away from the curious eyes of British wizards. Neither school knew the full extent of his activities at the other, creating a compartmentalized life that sometimes left Harry feeling fragmented. Only the Delicours understood the totality of his experience, the pressure of being both the boy who lived and the Veela king, the challenges of balancing two magical traditions, and the growing signs that Voldemort's return was imminent. The manor's grand entrance hall was alive with activity when they arrived. House elves darted about with refreshments while Sebastian greeted a cluster of distinguished-looking wizards. Near the large fireplace, deep in conversation with Apollon, stood Albus Dumbledore, resplendent in midnight blue robes spangled with moving silver stars. And beside him, looking healthier than Harry had ever seen him but still bearing the haunted eyes of Azkaban, was Sirius Black. "Harry!" Sirius exclaimed, spotting him immediately. He crossed the room in long strides and enveloped his godson in a fierce hug. "Look at you. James would be strutting like a peacock if he could see you now. And Lily would be hexing him for it," Dumbledore added with a twinkling smile, approaching more sedately. "Good evening, Harry, Miss Delacour. I trust we find you well." "Professor," Harry nodded respectfully. Despite their sometimes complicated relationship, he had developed genuine admiration for the elderly headmaster over the past 3 years. "I didn't expect you until tomorrow." "Plans change," Dumbledore replied, his expression growing serious. "Particularly when certain information comes to light that cannot wait." He glanced meaningfully at Sebastian. "Perhaps we might continue this conversation somewhere more private?" Sebastian nodded, gesturing toward his study. "Of course. Harry, Fleur, I believe this concerns you both as well." As they made their way through the manor's elegant corridors, Harry noted the tension in the adults' postures. Whatever news had prompted this early arrival, it clearly wasn't good. Sebastian's study was a handsome room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large desk of polished rosewood. As they settled into comfortable chairs, Apollon waved her wand to activate privacy wards that hummed softly as they enclosed the space. "I'll come directly to the point," Dumbledore said once they were secure. "We have reason to believe Voldemort has learned of the Veela prophecy, and specifically, of Harry's role in it." A chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature ran through Harry. "How?" Igor Karkaroff, Sirius growled. "The coward has been making inquiries in Eastern Europe, particularly among communities with Veela connections." "Karkaroff? The Durmstrang headmaster?" Fleur asked, surprised. Harry had mentioned the man in his letters from Hogwarts, describing him as unpleasant but not overtly threatening. "And former Death Eater," Sebastian added grimly. "One who avoided Azkaban by providing names of his associates." "We believe Karkaroff is acting on Voldemort's behalf, though possibly indirectly," Dumbledore continued. "Severus has detected unusual movement among certain circles that traditionally serve Tom Riddle. They appear to be gathering information about Veela magic, particularly its royal lineage." Harry's mind raced. After 3 years of confrontations with Voldemort's lingering influence, he had developed a grim understanding of his enemy's methods. "He sees a threat," Harry reasoned aloud. "Or an opportunity." "Precisely," Dumbledore nodded approvingly. "Your dual magical nature represents something Voldemort has never encountered, power that operates outside the traditional wizard framework he understands." "The coronation," Fleur said suddenly. "If he knows about the prophecy, he knows the coronation will complete Harry's connection to the ancient fire. And he'll want to prevent it," Sirius concluded. "Or corrupt it somehow." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. The coronation ceremony was scheduled for 3 days hence, the eve of Harry's 15th birthday. Representatives from every Veela clan in Europe would be in attendance, along with select allies from the wizard world. If Voldemort or his agents attempted to disrupt the ritual, the consequences could be catastrophic. "We should postpone," Apollon suggested, her face tight with concern. "We cannot," a new voice said from the doorway. Serafina Valerian, the oracle of the Eastern clans, stood there, her white gold hair gleaming in the lamplight. Though she appeared to have aged little since Harry's 11th birthday, something in her silvery eyes spoke of recent strain. "The celestial alignment is crucial. The coronation must proceed as scheduled, or the opportunity will not come again for 27 years. "Serafina," Sebastian rose to greet her with a formal bow. "We didn't expect you until morning." "The wind paths brought me early," she replied cryptically. Her gaze fixed on Harry. "You have grown into your power well, young king. But the true test approaches faster than any of us anticipated." "Madame Valerian," Dumbledore inclined his head respectfully. "Your insights would be most valuable in our current dilemma." The oracle moved into the room, her movements fluid as water. "The Dark One seeks what he does not understand. He believes the Veela power can be taken, consumed, added to his own." Her lip curled in disdain. "He knows nothing of its true nature." "But that won't stop him from trying," Harry pointed out. "No," Serafina agreed. "He will move against the coronation. This is certain. But in doing so, he creates the very circumstances the prophecy foretold." She turned to Fleur with an enigmatic smile. "The herald will stand with her king, and the golden flame will awaken." Fleur straightened, her eyes widening slightly. You've seen this? Recently? The paths of possibility narrow daily, Serafina confirmed. Some outcomes fade, others strengthen. This one burns brighter with each passing hour. Harry looked between Fleur and the oracle, sensing there was more to this exchange than he understood. Before he could ask, Dumbledore spoke again. If postponement is not an option, then we must increase security while maintaining the illusion of normalcy, the headmaster said pragmatically. I suggest a two-layer approach, visible protections that any observer would expect, and a more subtle inner defense known only to those in this room. The Veela guards will form the outer perimeter, Sebastian nodded. They were already planned for the ceremony. And the Order can provide additional support, Sirius added, referring to Dumbledore's secretive organization, the Order of the Phoenix, which had recently begun reforming in response to signs of Voldemort's resurging influence. What about the inner defense? Harry asked. What did you have in mind? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Something rather special, combining wizard and Veela magic in a way I don't believe has been attempted before. He turned to Fleur. Miss Delacour, I understand you've been experimenting with a modified version of the Fidelius charm. Fleur nodded, looking surprised that Dumbledore knew of her research. A variant that incorporates Veela fire protection. It's still theoretical, but the calculations suggest it would be unbreakable by conventional wizard means. Excellent, Dumbledore smiled. Between your innovation, Harry's unique magic, and a few contributions of my own, I believe we can create a protection that even Tom Riddle would find insurmountable. The planning continued late into the night, with Serafina occasionally offering cryptic insights that subtly guided the conversation in unexpected directions. By the time they finally retired, a comprehensive security strategy had been developed, one that would protect the coronation while simultaneously laying a trap for any who might seek to disrupt it. As Harry climbed the stairs to his bedroom, Fleur fell into step beside him. You should have asked her, she said quietly. Asked who what? Serafina. About the golden flame she mentioned. About us. There was a note of frustration in Fleur's voice that Harry rarely heard. I thought, Harry paused at the landing. I wasn't sure if it was something you wanted discussed publicly. Fleur studied him for a moment, then sighed. You still don't see it, do you? After all these years. See what? Harry asked, genuinely confused. Instead of answering, Fleur reached out and touched the heartstone pendant resting against his chest. The crystal flared with silver light at her touch, sending a wave of warmth through Harry's body. Ask yourself why this responds to both of us, she said softly. Why the herald is as central to the prophecy as the king. Her blue eyes held his for a charged moment before she turned away. Good night, Harry. We have much to prepare tomorrow. Harry watched her disappear down the hallway toward her room, feeling as though he'd missed something vitally important. The heartstone still tingled warmly against his skin, a constant reminder of the connection that had defined his life since age 6. In his room, he found a letter waiting on his pillow, the familiar handwriting belonging to Hermione Granger. His friends at Hogwarts knew only that he was participating in an important family ceremony during the summer. The full nature of his Veela heritage remained known to just a trusted few. Dear Harry, I hope this finds you well and enjoying your summer in France. Ron and I are still at the Burrow. His parents have been wonderful hosts, though I think Mrs. Weasley is running out of degenoming chores for us. We're both terribly curious about this mysterious ceremony you mentioned. Ron has a wild theory that you're being inducted into some secret French wizard society. I've told him that's ridiculous, but then again, with you, the extraordinary seems to be ordinary. There's been odd news here in Britain. Mr. Weasley says the ministry is in an uproar over something, but no one will speak plainly about it. Percy struts around looking important but won't tell his family anything. The Daily Prophet has been printing strange little stories about magical disturbances across Europe. I've been researching, of course, and found references to similar patterns of events before Voldemort's first rise to power. Harry, please be careful. Whatever this ceremony is, make sure you're properly protected. We miss you and can't wait to see you before term starts, whether at Diagon Alley or on the train. Write when you can. Love from, Hermione. P.S. Ron says to tell you the Chudley Cannons won a match. He nearly fainted from shock. Harry smiled at the postscript, but the rest of the letter only reinforced his concerns. If Hermione was detecting patterns similar to Voldemort's first rise, it confirmed what Dumbledore and the Order already suspected: the Dark Lord was methodically rebuilding his power base. Setting the letter aside, Harry moved to the window that overlooked the estate's extensive grounds. In the distance, he could make out the sacred grove where the coronation would take place, the same location as his recognition ceremony 4 years earlier. Under the moonlight, the silver birch trees seemed to glow with an inner luminescence. The enormity of what approached settled heavily on his shoulders. The coronation wasn't just a ceremony, it was the fulfillment of the prophecy that had altered the course of his life. Once completed, there would be no more ambiguity about his status, no hiding behind the simpler identity of the boy who lived. He would be irrevocably, publicly claimed by the Veela magic as their sovereign. And apparently, Voldemort found that prospect interesting enough to investigate. Harry touched the ring the Oracle had given him on his 11th birthday, which hadn't left his finger since that day. The strange metal was warm against his skin, seeming to pulse with its own heartbeat. Like the Heartstone, it connected him to something ancient and powerful, something that had chosen him for reasons he still didn't fully understand. "Why me?" he whispered to the night, an echo of the question he'd asked so many times over the years. This time, surprisingly, he received an answer, though not in words. The Heartstone and ring flared simultaneously, and a vision flashed through his mind, a golden flame intertwined with silver, creating a light so pure it banished shadows that had persisted for millennia. When the vision faded, Harry stood motionless, processing what he'd seen. It wasn't an explanation exactly, but it felt like a promise, or perhaps a preview of what was to come. With a renewed sense of purpose, he prepared for bed. Whatever Voldemort was planning, whatever challenges the coronation might bring, Harry would face them as he always had, not alone, but surrounded by the family and friends who had helped transform him from the boy in the cupboard to the young man he was becoming. The Veela King prophecy had found him, but he had chosen to embrace it. And that choice, he realized as sleep claimed him, made all the difference. The following day brought a flurry of activity to the Delicours estate. Delegations from Veela clans across Europe arrived continuously, each bringing ceremonial gifts and ancient artifacts required for the coronation. Security was visibly heightened, with Veela guards stationed at strategic points throughout the property and additional protective enchantments layered over the existing wards. Harry spent the morning with Dumbledore and Sebastian, reviewing the complex magical theory underlying the special protection they planned to implement. The combination of Fidelius principles, Veela fire protection, and elements of ancient blood magic created a formidable shield, one that would appear as a standard ceremonial boundary to observers while actually functioning as a selective barrier. The key innovation, Dumbledore explained as they worked in Sebastian's study, is the intent recognition component. Traditional protective spells respond to magical signatures or specific counters. This barrier will respond to intention itself. Like the Hogwarts Room of Requirement? Harry asked, referencing a magical room he discovered during his 3rd year. Similar in concept, though considerably more discriminating, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. Those who come to witness and celebrate will pass through unimpeded. Those who harbor malicious intent will find themselves redirected. To where? Harry frowned. Sebastian's smile was uncharacteristically predatory. A specially prepared containment area beneath the East Gardens. Heavily warded, of course. And monitored by Order members, Dumbledore added. We hope to capture rather than merely deter any unwelcome visitors. By midday, Harry was mentally exhausted but satisfied with their progress. The theoretical framework was sound, implementation would begin that evening, requiring the combined magical strength of Harry, Fleur, Dumbledore, and several senior Veela mages. As he left the study in search of lunch, Harry nearly collided with Gabrielle, now 11 and preparing for her first year at Beauxbatons. Her silver blonde hair was tied back in an intricate braid, and her expression was uncharacteristically serious. "There you are," she exclaimed. "Maman's been looking everywhere for you. The ritual robes need final adjustments, and the clan mothers want to begin the purification ceremony before sunset." Harry suppressed a groan. The preparations for his recognition at 11 had been extensive, the coronation protocols were proving even more elaborate. "I'll be there in a moment. I just need to, no time." Gabrielle grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the east wing where the ceremonial preparations were centered. "The oracle says the stars wait for no one, not even kings." Resigned to his fate, Harry allowed himself to be led through the manor. They passed numerous guests in the corridors, Veela delegates from across Europe, wizard allies of the Delicours family, and several members of the Order of the Phoenix who nodded respectfully as he passed. In the formal reception room, he spotted Sirius deep in conversation with Remus Lupin, who had arrived that morning. The two marauders were examining what appeared to be a detailed map of the estate grounds, likely coordinating security positions for the Order members. Nearby, Apollon was directing a team of house elves in arranging elaborate floral displays incorporating rare magical plants that enhanced protective energy. Her expression brightened when she spotted Harry. "There you are. Come, the clan mothers are waiting in the ritual chamber." Harry shot a resigned look at Sirius, who responded with a sympathetic grin and a mock salute. "Duty calls, Your Majesty," his godfather teased. "Wait until I have actual authority," Harry retorted good-naturedly. "Royal Decree Number 1, no more, Your Majesty, jokes." Technically, Apollon corrected as she guided him toward the ritual chamber, the proper address is, Your Radiance, in formal Veela contexts. "Though I imagine you'll continue insisting on simply, Harry, regardless." "You imagine correctly," Harry affirmed. The ritual chamber, located in the oldest part of the manor, was a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to represent the night sky. Around its perimeter stood 12 Veela elders, the clan mothers whose lineages traced back to the original Veela tribes. At the center was a pool of clear water that reflected the enchanted ceiling above. "The king approaches," announced the eldest, a dignified woman with silver hair and eyes of such a pale blue they appeared almost white. "Let the purification begin." What followed was 3 hours of increasingly complex ritual preparations. Harry was bathed in waters infused with rare magical herbs, dressed in ceremonial robes of silver and white, and adorned with ancient symbols painted on his skin with a brush dipped in a potion that shimmered with an inner light. Throughout the process, the clan mothers chanted in the ancient Veela language, their voices weaving a spell of protection and preparation around him. By the time they finished, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. Harry felt physically refreshed but magically sensitized, as though his skin had become a conductor for the ambient magical energy surrounding the estate. "It is done," the eldest clan mother declared. "The vessel is prepared for the ancient fire's final blessing." She fixed Harry with her pale gaze. "Rest now, young king. Conserve your strength. Tomorrow will demand all you have to give, and more." As Harry left the ritual chamber, he found Fleur waiting outside. She too had undergone ceremonial preparations, dressed in formal robes of pale blue with silver accents that complemented his own attire. "How do you feel?" she asked as they walked together toward the Privet family wing. "Like I'm carrying a lightning storm under my skin," Harry admitted. "Everything feels heightened. More intense." Fleur nodded. "The purification ritual strips away the barriers between your conscious mind and your magical core. It's necessary for the coronation magic to properly integrate." "And you?" Harry studied her closely, noting the subtle shimmer beneath her skin that indicated her Veela nature was similarly close to the surface. "You've undergone preparations too." "Different, but parallel," she confirmed. "As your herald, my role in the coronation is significant." There it was again, that hint of something important left unspoken. Harry stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Fleur, What aren't you telling me? What exactly does the prophecy say about the herald? Fleur hesitated, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Finally, she said, the complete prophecy has always been known only to the oracles. What the clans share publicly is a simplified version. She took a deep breath. But Seraphina spoke to me privately last night. She says it's time I understood my full role. Which is? The herald doesn't merely find the king, Fleur said carefully. She becomes his counterbalance. His anchor to the mortal world as the ancient fire transforms him. Her eyes met his directly. In the original tongue, the word used is soul-bound. Harry felt the implications of this word settle heavily between them. Soul-bound, he repeated. That sounds rather permanent. It is. Fleur's voice was steady now. The prophecy says, the king shall rise through fire and pain, his power bound to human heart through she who bears his mark and shares his flame. Apart, each strong, together, invincible. And the golden flame Seraphina mentioned is created when our magics fully merge during the coronation. A faint blush colored Fleur's cheeks. It's why I gave you the Heartstone years ago. I knew, even then, though I didn't fully understand what it meant. Harry's mind raced, pieces falling into place, the way the Heartstone responded to both of them, the strange dreams he occasionally had where he and Fleur stood together surrounded by intertwined silver and golden flames, the subtle shift in their relationship as they both matured. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, not accusingly but genuinely curious. The bond forms naturally or not at all, she explained. If you had known, if you had felt obligated. She shook her head. It needed to develop in its own time, based on genuine connection. Besides, a smile touched her lips, you had enough prophecies to worry about without adding another. Harry couldn't argue with that logic. Between the Veela King prophecy and the still mysterious prophecy involving Voldemort that Dumbledore occasionally referenced but hadn't fully disclosed, his life was already sufficiently complicated by predetermined destinies. Yet this revelation about Fleur didn't feel like an additional burden. Instead, it felt like the naming of something that had been growing between them for years, something he hadn't had words for until now. Before he could formulate a response, a silvery Patronus, Remus Lupin's wolf, bounded toward them. Security breach at the north boundary, it announced in Remus's voice. Intruders repelled but active monitoring recommended. Dumbledore requests Harry and Fleur at the command center immediately. The personal moment shattered, replaced by the urgent reality of their situation. Without another word, they hurried toward the manor's west wing, where a command center had been established to coordinate security for the coronation. They found Dumbledore, Sirius, Remus, Sebastian, and several Order members gathered around a large tactical display of the estate. Red markers pulsed at the northern edge of the property. 3 wizards attempted to breach the outer wards, Remus explained as they entered. Not a serious attempt, more like reconnaissance, testing our defenses. Death Eaters? Harry asked. Not bearing the mark, Sirius replied, but using tactics consistent with Voldemort's operations. Likely mercenaries or new recruits. They retreated when confronted by the Veela guards, Sebastian added, but not before this was recovered. He indicated a small object on the table, what appeared to be a crystalline beetle. A surveillance construct, Dumbledore explained, his expression grave. Quite sophisticated. Had it penetrated our defenses, it would have transmitted details of our security arrangements back to its creator. Karkaroff? Fleur suggested. Possibly, Dumbledore conceded, though this magic bears signatures more consistent with British dark wizardry. He gave Harry a meaningful look. I believe this may be the work of a Death Eater rather closer to Voldemort's inner circle. Can we use it to feed false information? Harry asked, thinking strategically. Sebastian's eyebrows rose in surprise, while Sirius grinned proudly. Already thinking like your father, and your mother too, for that matter. James would go for the misdirection play every time. A sound suggestion, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. With some modifications, this construct could indeed be repurposed to our advantage. He gestured to Bill Weasley, who had recently joined the Order and was present as both security and curse-breaking support. Mr. Weasley, perhaps you could examine this artifact and determine the safest method of altering its function. As Bill set to work, Dumbledore turned back to Harry and Fleur. This incursion, while concerning, confirms our approach. They are probing rather than attacking directly, which suggests they plan a more significant move during the ceremony itself. Which is exactly what we anticipated, Harry noted. The question is, who will they send for the main event? Somehow I doubt Voldemort will risk appearing himself. Indeed not, Dumbledore agreed. Tom remains physically compromised, based on our intelligence. He requires a more complete restoration before risking direct confrontation. The headmaster's blue eyes grew distant. No, I suspect he will send his most trusted lieutenants, those who have already returned to his service. The Lestranges? Malfoy? Sirius suggested darkly. Potentially, Dumbledore nodded. Though Lucius maintains his public facade of respectability too carefully to risk exposure unless the rewards were exceptional. He turned to Harry. Which, in this case, they might well be. The magic of a Veela coronation, particularly involving the prophesied king, would be a tempting prize indeed for Voldemort's restoration plans. The implications hung heavily in the air. Voldemort, in his weakened state, would be seeking magical means to restore himself to full power. The unique energy of Harry's coronation, combining ancient Veela magic with his own singular magical signature, would present an irresistible target. We continue as planned, Sebastian decided after a moment. But with enhanced vigilance. Double the guards at all perimeter points, and implement the inner protection circle tonight rather than tomorrow. I concur, Dumbledore said. Miss Delicour, are you prepared to begin the specialized warding this evening? Fleur nodded confidently. The calculations are complete, and I've adapted the incantation to incorporate Harry's dual magical signature. Excellent, Dumbledore smiled. Then let us proceed immediately. The sooner our special defenses are in place, the less opportunity our opponents will have to counter them. As the meeting dispersed, Harry found himself walking alongside Sirius toward the sacred grove where they would establish the protective barrier. Nervous, his godfather asked quietly. About the ceremony or the potential Death Eater attack? Harry replied with a wry smile. Both, I suppose. Harry considered the question seriously. Yes to both, but not in the way you might think. I'm not afraid of the danger, at least, not for myself. He paused, organizing his thoughts. After everything that's happened at Hogwarts these past 3 years, I've gotten rather used to life-threatening situations. Sirius winced. Not something a guardian likes to hear. Sorry, Harry smiled apologetically. What I mean is, I'm more concerned about what comes after. Once this ceremony is complete, there's no going back. No more pretending I'm just Harry Potter, exchange student with an unusual education arrangement. Understanding dawned in Sirius's eyes. You're worried about how the wider wizarding world will react when they learn the boy who lived is also Veela royalty. Exactly, Harry nodded, relieved that Sirius understood. The British magical community barely tolerates half-breeds, as they call them. Look how they treat Remus, or Hagrid when his heritage was exposed. And now I'll be not just part Veela, but their king. He shook his head. The political fallout will be significant. You're right about that, Sirius acknowledged, but perhaps not entirely in the way you're thinking. He clasped Harry's shoulder. What you represent is revolutionary, Harry, a bridge between worlds that have been artificially separated by wizard prejudice for centuries. It won't be easy, but it's necessary. And you won't face it alone. Harry smiled gratefully. Thanks, Sirius. That actually helps. Good, because we're here, and I suspect you'll need all your concentration for whatever complicated magic you're about to perform. They had reached the sacred grove where the coronation would take place the following day. Dumbledore and Fleur were already there, along with Apollon and several senior Veela mages. In the center of the grove stood a raised stone dais, the same platform where Harry had undergone his recognition 4 years earlier. "Ah, Harry, excellent," Dumbledore greeted them. "We're ready to begin." The next hour was consumed by intense magical work as they established the specialized barrier. Fleur led the casting, her innovative adaptation of the Fidelius charm forming the foundation. Dumbledore contributed elements of intent-based ward construction, while the Veela mages wove in their traditional fire protections. Harry's role was to serve as both power source and linchpin, his unique magical signature binding the disparate elements into a cohesive whole. By the time they finished, the sun had set completely, and the grove was illuminated only by the silver flames that burned perpetually in enchanted sconces around its perimeter. To the naked eye, nothing appeared to have changed, but Harry could feel the powerful magic humming in the air around them, invisible, intangible to those without the sensitivity to detect it, but impenetrable to anyone with harmful intent. "It is done," one of the Veela elders announced. "The sacred space is sealed until the coronation. Now we wait," Fleur said softly, coming to stand beside Harry. The magical exertion had left a becoming flush on her cheeks, and her eyes shimmered with traces of her Veela nature close to the surface. "And prepare," Harry added, his gaze sweeping the darkened grounds beyond the grove. Somewhere out there, Voldemort's agents were planning their move. The certainty of impending confrontation settled over him, not with dread, but with a strange sense of inevitability. For the first time, Harry realized he was no longer running from his destiny but moving purposefully toward it. Whatever tomorrow brought, ceremony or battle, transformation or trial, he would face it not as the reluctant child of prophecy, but as the young man he had chosen to become. The dawn of Harry's 15th birthday broke clear and bright, the Mediterranean sky an unblemished blue that promised perfect weather for the coronation scheduled for midday. Unlike his previous birthdays with the Delicours, there would be no family breakfast or opening of presents. Today belonged to ancient tradition, and the protocols were strict. Harry had spent the night in meditation, as required by the coronation ritual. Alone in the sacred grove, surrounded by protective magic and vigilant guards just beyond his awareness, he had connected deeply with both aspects of his magical nature, the wizard's power he had inherited from his parents and the Veela fire that had claimed him 9 years earlier. As the first light touched the grove, Seraphina arrived to guide him through the final preparations. "The sun rises on a day long foretold," she greeted him, her silver eyes reflecting the dawn light. "How do you feel, young king?" "Ready," Harry answered simply, surprised to find it was true. The night of meditation had brought a clarity he hadn't expected, a sense of purpose that transcended his earlier concerns. "Good," Seraphina nodded. "The path narrows further. Events accelerate toward their culmination." She handed him a small vial containing a pearlescent liquid. "The essence of awakening. Drink, and then we will proceed to the final preparations." The potion tasted of sunlight and mountain air, with an underlying note of something ancient and powerful. As it coursed through him, Harry felt his magical senses sharpen dramatically. The world around him seemed to gain an additional dimension, not just physically visible, but magically perceptible in ways he had never experienced before. "The veil thins for you," Seraphina observed. "You begin to see as we see." She led him to a small pavilion erected at the edge of the grove, where the final ritual preparations would take place. There, Harry was bathed in sacred waters, dressed in elaborate ceremonial robes of silver and white, and adorned with the ancient symbols of Veela royalty. Throughout the process, Seraphina spoke of the history he was about to join, of the first Veela sovereign, who united the scattered tribes when wizard persecution was at its height, of the centuries when Veela lived in harmony with wizard communities before prejudice gradually pushed them to the margins, of the prophecy that foretold a king of dual heritage who would restore the balance between worlds. "The crown you accept today is not merely symbolic," she explained as attendants applied the final touches to his ceremonial attire. "It channels ancient magic, magic that predates the artificial distinctions wizards created between beings they deemed human and creature. Will it change me? Harry asked, a question he had wondered about for years. It already has, Seraphina replied enigmatically. The question is not whether you will change, but how you will direct that change. She stepped back, examining him critically. It is time. The guests assemble, and the herald awaits. Outside, the grove had been transformed. Hundreds of chairs arranged in concentric circles surrounded the central dais, now adorned with ancient Veela symbols inlaid in precious metals. Representatives from every Veela clan in Europe occupied the innermost ring, with wizard allies and friends filling the outer circles. Harry spotted familiar faces as he was escorted to the edge of the assembly, Sirius and Remus seated with the Delicours, Dumbledore conversing quietly with Sebastian, and to his surprise, Ron and Hermione alongside the Weasley family, looking somewhat overwhelmed by the grandeur of the occasion. Your Hogwarts friends arrived this morning, Seraphina explained, following his gaze. The headmaster thought their presence would strengthen the connection between your worlds. Before Harry could respond, a hush fell over the assembly. At the opposite side of the grove, Fleur appeared, escorted by Apollon and Gabrielle. Her ceremonial robes matched his in style but were the pale blue of a summer sky rather than silver white. In her hands, she carried a cushion bearing what appeared to be a circlet of woven silver and white gold. The coronation begins, Seraphina announced, her voice carrying effortlessly across the grove. Let all bear witness to the fulfillment of prophecy, the recognition of the king who will bridge divided worlds. With these words, Harry and Fleur began walking simultaneously toward the central dais from opposite sides of the grove. As they moved, the assembled Veela began to sing, a haunting melody in their ancient language that seemed to make the very air vibrate with magical energy. They reached the dais at the same moment, ascending from opposite sides to meet at its center. Harry was struck by the solemnity in Fleur's expression, but also the certainty. Whatever happened next, she was ready, they both were. Seraphina joined them on the platform, raising her arms for silence. For 5,000 years, she intoned, since the first Veela emerged from the union of elemental fire and mortal flesh, our people have lived between worlds, neither fully of the earth nor entirely of the flame. When darkness threatened to consume us, the first sovereign united our scattered tribes under the protection of the ancient fire. She gestured to the circlet Fleur held. This crown, forged from the freely given essence of the original 12 clans, has awaited the prophesied king, the one who would restore balance to our divided worlds and reawaken the old magic that binds all magical beings in harmony. Turning to Harry, she continued, Harry James Potter Delicour, claimed by the ancient fire, recognized by the clans, tested by darkness and found worthy, do you accept the responsibility of sovereignty, pledging to protect and unite the Veela in accordance with the ancient laws? Harry's voice rang clear and strong, I accept this responsibility freely and fully, pledging my magic and my life to the protection of the Veela and the unification of all magical beings. And you, Fleur Isabel Delacour, herald of the prophecy, first to recognize the king's magic, do you accept your role as anchor and counterbalance, pledging to stand with the king through flame and shadow? Fleur's answer matched Harry's in certainty, I accept this role freely and fully, pledging my magic and my life to stand with the king and secure his connection to both worlds he bridges. Seraphina nodded solemnly. Then let us proceed. The ancient fire awaits its chosen vessels. At these words, the air at the center of the dais began to shimmer with heat. Slowly, a column of silver flame materialized, not summoned by any person present, but emerging of its own accord from the very fabric of the grove's magic. The king approaches the flame of transformation, Seraphina directed. Harry stepped forward, directly into the pillar of silver fire. Unlike during his recognition ceremony, there was no shock, no discomfort, only a sense of homecoming, as though the flame recognized him as its own. The fire swirled around him, sinking beneath his skin and illuminating his veins with silver light. The herald approaches the flame of binding, Seraphina continued. Fleur stepped into the fire beside Harry, the circlet still held before her. As the flames engulfed her, her appearance subtly shifted, not the full transformation of an angry Veela, but a heightening of her natural beauty that made her seem almost luminous from within. Together they stand, divided no longer, Seraphina intoned. Let the ancient fire judge their worthiness and forge the bond that prophecy foretold. The silver flame intensified, rising higher above the dais until it towered 20 feet into the air. Within its heart, Harry and Fleur faced each other, their forms visible to the assembly as silhouettes wreathed in living fire. Harry felt the flame probing deeper than ever before, beyond his memories and emotions into the very core of his being. It searched for something essential, a final confirmation of his suitability to bear the responsibility being placed upon him. "Why do you seek this crown?" came the voiceless question, just as it had during his recognition. "For unity, for healing the divisions that weaken us all," Harry answered silently. "Would you sacrifice your own happiness for this purpose?" "If necessary, yes." "And what of love? Would you set aside personal desire for duty?" Harry's eyes found Fleur's across the small space between them. In her gaze, he saw not just the friend who had found him all those years ago, not just the herald bound to him by prophecy, but the woman who had grown alongside him, strong, brilliant, and fiercely loyal. "No," he answered the flame. "Love and duty need not be opposed. They strengthen each other." He felt rather than heard Fleur's parallel interrogation by the flame, sensed her unwavering certainty, her absolute commitment to the path they shared. After what seemed like an eternity but might have been mere moments, the ancient fire's scrutiny ceased. The silver flames condensed, focusing into twin vortices that centered on their chests, directly over their hearts. "The fire accepts their pledge," Seraphina announced. "Let the coronation be completed." Fleur stepped closer, raising the circlet. "With the blessing of the ancient fire and the witness of all clans," she said, her voice steady despite the magical intensity surrounding them, "I crown you Harry James Potter Delicour, King of the Veela, Guardian of the Eternal Flame, Bridge between Worlds." She placed the circlet on his head, where it settled naturally among his unruly black hair. The moment it touched him, two extraordinary things happened simultaneously. First, the silver flame surrounding them transformed, its color shifting to a pure, radiant gold that illuminated the entire grove with its brilliance. Second, Harry felt a profound connection snap into place between himself and Fleur, not mind reading exactly, but a deep awareness of her presence, her emotions, her very essence. "The golden flame awakens," Seraphina breathed, genuine awe in her voice. "The bond is forged." The assembled Veela rose as one, extending their arms in the traditional gesture of acceptance. From each palm sprang a small flame, silver from most, but gold from those closest to Harry and Fleur. These flames rose into the air, joining together above the assembly in a spectacular dome of light that encompassed the entire grove. "It is done," Seraphina announced. "The prophecy is fulfilled. The king is crowned, the herald ascended, the golden flame awakened. Let all who witness remember this day as the beginning of a new age of unity between all magical beings." A cheer rose from the assembly, a sound of pure jubilation that seemed to make the very air vibrate with magical energy. Harry felt their acceptance, their hope, their sudden fierce loyalty flooding through the newly established bond with the Veela magic. But beneath the celebration, his enhanced senses detected something else, a disturbance at the edge of the protective barrier they had established the previous night. A probing, malicious energy testing for weaknesses. Harry's eyes met Dumbledore's across the crowd. The headmaster had sensed it too, his expression shifting subtly from celebration to vigilance. With the smallest nod, Dumbledore confirmed what Harry already knew, their expected uninvited guests had arrived. The attack, when it came, was both subtle and devastating. No dramatic explosion or frontal assault, but a careful, precise unraveling of the protective enchantments from an unexpected direction, below. The tunnels, Sebastian realized first, rising to his feet with wand drawn. "They're coming through the old wine cellars." Harry had barely processed this information when the ground at the perimeter of the grove split open, disgorging black-robed figures wearing silver masks, Death Eaters, at least a dozen of them, emerging from a passage that shouldn't have existed. "Protect the king," came the immediate cry from the Veela guards, who moved with preternatural speed to form a defensive perimeter around the dais. But Harry had no intention of being a passive participant in this confrontation. The coronation magic still surged through him, heightening his abilities and awareness to unprecedented levels. Beside him, Fleur radiated similar power, the golden flame still enveloping them both. "Focus the flame," she said urgently. "Direct it outward, through the bond." Understanding instinctively what she meant, Harry reached for the golden fire surrounding them. Unlike the silver Veela flame he had mastered years ago, this new magic responded to both of them simultaneously, a perfect blending of their powers, greater than the sum of its parts. With a synchronized gesture, they sent a wave of golden fire sweeping across the grove. It passed harmlessly through friends and allies but struck the Death Eaters like a physical force, throwing several backward and momentarily disrupting their attack. The brief respite gave the defenders time to organize. Dumbledore, Sirius, Remus, and the Weasleys formed a secondary defensive line, while Sebastian and Apollon coordinated the Veela guards in containing the breach. "Clever," came a cold, female voice from among the attackers. A witch stepped forward, removing her mask to reveal the heavily lidded eyes and once beautiful features of Bellatrix Lestrange. "But not clever enough, little king." With a vicious slashing motion, she sent a bolt of sickly purple energy directly at Harry and Fleur. It struck the golden flame surrounding them and dissipated, absorbed by their protective aura. "Impossible," Bellatrix hissed, genuine shock registering on her face. "No," Harry replied, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to resonate through the grove. "Inevitable. Your master sent you to capture power he doesn't understand." While he spoke, Harry was extending his magical senses outward, taking inventory of the situation. 12 Death Eaters had breached the perimeter, but they were now effectively surrounded by the combined forces of the Veela guards, Order members, and wizard allies. The protective barrier remained intact around the grove itself, preventing additional incursions. Most importantly, Harry could sense the magical trap they had prepared functioning as intended. Any Death Eater attempting to flee would find themselves redirected to the containment area Sebastian had established. "You think you've won?" Bellatrix laughed, a sound of genuine madness. "This was never about capturing you, boy. It was about this." From within her robes, she produced a strange device, a crystalline orb swirling with dark energy. With a triumphant cry, she hurled it toward the center of the dais, directly at the spot where the ancient fire had manifested. "No!" Seraphina cried, recognizing the threat before anyone else. "It's a magical siphon." The orb froze in midair, caught by Dumbledore's silent spell before it could reach its target. But the momentary distraction had served its purpose. The Death Eaters launched a coordinated attack, their spells targeting not the people but the very ground of the sacred grove. "They're trying to destabilize the ley line junction," Apollon shouted, understanding dawning on her face. "If they disrupt the coronation magic while it's still settling, the backlash could kill everyone present," Sebastian finished grimly. Harry felt it immediately, the subtle but growing disturbance in the magical currents that ran beneath the grove. The Death Eaters' spells were creating discordant vibrations in the ancient power, threatening to shatter the harmonious pattern established by centuries of Veela ceremonies. "We need to stabilize the junction," Fleur said urgently. "Direct the flame downward, into the earth itself." Without hesitation, Harry joined his will with hers, channeling the golden fire that still surrounded them into the ground beneath the dais. The magic flowed like liquid light, seeking the disrupted ley lines and enveloping them in protective energy. But the Death Eaters, recognizing their strategy, intensified their assault. Spells rained down on the dais from all directions despite the defenders' best efforts to shield them. "It's not enough," Harry realized, feeling the magical instability growing despite their efforts. "We need more power, more focus." "The circlet," Seraphina said suddenly, appearing beside them despite the chaos. "It was forged to channel the collective power of all Veela. Use it now, call upon the clans." Understanding flashed between Harry and Fleur through their newly formed bond. With a synchronized movement, they each placed one hand on the circlet resting on Harry's head. "We call upon the ancient fire," they intoned together, their voices blending in perfect harmony. "We call upon the strength of the 12 original clans, the power of our united people, the magic that transcends artificial divisions." The response was immediate and overwhelming. From every Veela present, a stream of silver fire erupted, flowing toward the dais and converging on the circlet. The golden flame surrounding Harry and Fleur expanded exponentially, creating a dome of pure magical energy that encompassed the entire grove. Through their shared consciousness, Harry and Fleur directed this combined power downward, into the destabilized ley junction. The golden flame sank into the earth, flowing along the magical currents like a healing balm, restoring harmony where the Death Eater's spells had created discord. The ground, which had begun to tremble ominously, gradually stilled. The magical backlash Apollon had feared subsided, replaced by a new equilibrium, stronger and more stable than before. But the Death Eaters, realizing their primary strategy had failed, shifted to desperate violence. Bellatrix, in particular, seemed determined to claim at least one significant casualty before the inevitable defeat. "If we can't have the magic," she shrieked, "we'll take the king's heart instead." Her wand slashed toward Fleur, unleashing a killing curse that blazed green against the golden light filling the grove. What happened next occurred almost too quickly for observers to follow. The golden flame surrounding Harry and Fleur seemed to develop a consciousness of its own, interposing itself between Fleur and the killing curse. The deadly green energy struck the golden barrier and, impossibly, rebounded, not toward Bellatrix, but upward into the sky where it dissipated harmlessly. "The same protection," Dumbledore murmured, watching in wonder. Lily's sacrifice, magnified and transformed through the Veela bond. The failure of the killing curse seemed to break something in Bellatrix. With a howl of rage, she launched herself physically toward the dais, only to be intercepted by Sirius. The cousins collided in a tangle of spells and fury, their long-standing family hatred manifest in the ferocity of their duel. Around them, the tide had definitively turned. The defenders, bolstered by the stabilizing influence of the golden flame, systematically overwhelmed the remaining Death Eaters. One by one, the black-robed figures were subdued, bound, and transported to the containment area via the magical trap Sebastian had designed. Bellatrix, seeing her forces defeated, made one last desperate attempt to escape. Breaking away from her duel with Sirius, she sprinted toward the breach they had created, clearly hoping to reach the tunnels before the trap could ensnare her. "She mustn't escape," Sebastian shouted. "She knows too much about our defenses." Without conscious thought, Harry extended his hand. The golden flame responded instantly, shooting from his palm in a concentrated stream that intercepted Bellatrix mid-stride. It wrapped around her like living rope, immobilizing her completely. "Impossible," she gasped as Harry and Fleur approached, the golden flame surrounding them like a second skin. "No magic should be able to bind me like this." "Not wizard magic, perhaps," Harry agreed, looking down at her with a mixture of pity and resolve. "But this is older. More primal. The Dark Lord will destroy you for this," Bellatrix snarled, her hatred undimmed despite her predicament. "He already knows what you are, what power you command. He will never stop hunting you." "Then we will face him together," Fleur said, standing shoulder to shoulder with Harry. As prophecy foretold. As Order members secured Bellatrix for transport to the containment area, Harry turned to survey the aftermath of the battle. Despite the violence, there appeared to be no casualties among the defenders, a minor miracle given the ferocity of the attack. The sacred grove itself had fared less well. The once pristine grass was scorched in places, and several of the ancient silver birch trees showed damage from stray spells. But the central dais remained intact, the site of the coronation unspoiled. "You handled that rather impressively," Dumbledore observed, approaching with Sebastian and Apollon. "Both the ceremony and the unexpected interruption." "The golden flame," Apollon said in wonder, studying the aura that still surrounded Harry and Fleur, though it had dimmed from its earlier intensity. The legends speak of it, but to actually witness. It's a manifestation of their completed bond, Seraphina explained, joining the group. The herald and the king, united in power and purpose as the prophecy foretold. Harry became aware of movement around the perimeter of the grove. Ministry officials had begun to arrive, not just French orators, but representatives from the British ministry as well, clearly summoned by someone to deal with the captured Death Eaters. And so it begins, Sebastian sighed, following Harry's gaze. The political aftermath. Are you prepared for what comes next? Before Harry could respond, Ron and Hermione pushed their way through the crowd, followed closely by Gabrielle. All three looked shaken but determined to reach him. Harry! Hermione exclaimed, stopping short of embracing him only because of the golden flame still surrounding him. That was incredible. Are you all right? What exactly happened? The magic felt so different from anything I've read about. Blimey, mate, Ron added, eyes wide. When you said, important family ceremony, I thought maybe a fancy dinner, not, whatever this was. And those Death Eaters. How did they find you here? Long story, Harry replied with a weary smile. The aftermath of the battle and ceremony combined was beginning to take its toll, a bone-deep exhaustion settling into his muscles. Fleur sensed his fatigue through their bond. The questions can wait, she said firmly. Harry needs rest. The coronation magic is still integrating, and the battle drained our reserves significantly. Of course, Dumbledore nodded. Sebastian, perhaps you could handle the initial diplomatic explanations while we escort Harry and Fleur somewhere more private? As they made their way through the crowd, Harry became increasingly aware of the stares following them, some odd, some confused, some calculating. Word would spread quickly now. The boy who lived was also the Veela king, bound to a herald in a magical union unprecedented in modern times. The wizarding world would never see him the same way again. But as he glanced at Fleur beside him, feeling the reassuring presence of her consciousness linked with his through their new bond, Harry found he didn't mind as much as he had anticipated. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever political machinations, whatever confrontation with Voldemort, they would face them together, stronger than either could be alone. They reached the manor's east wing, where private rooms had been prepared for their recovery. As the door closed behind them, shutting out the chaos of the aftermath, Fleur turned to him with a smile that contained equal parts exhaustion and elation. Well, your radiance, she teased gently, was your coronation everything you expected? Harry laughed despite his fatigue. Death Eater attack aside? I'm not sure what I expected, but... He gestured to the golden flame still shimmering faintly around them. This bond, it's more than I imagined possible. Fleur's expression softened. It will take time to fully understand. To learn its capabilities and limitations. She took his hand, and the flame brightened momentarily at the contact. But we have that time now. The prophecy is fulfilled, the coronation complete. And Voldemort? Harry asked, the reality of Bellatrix's threat lingering in his mind. We'll face something he never anticipated when he finally makes his move, Fleur said confidently. Not just the boy who lived, not just the Veela king, but both, strengthened by a bond his diminished soul could never comprehend. As if in response to her words, the golden flame pulsed once, brightly, before settling into a subtle shimmer that seemed to sink beneath their skin, still present but no longer visible to the casual observer. Rest now, Fleur advised, leading him toward an adjoining suite. Tomorrow will bring questions, explanations, and the beginning of whatever comes next. As Harry sank gratefully onto a comfortable couch, he found himself thinking not of the danger that had passed or the challenges that lay ahead, but of the journey that had brought him to this moment. From the frightened child in the cupboard to the young man he had become, recognized, crowned, and bound to a legacy far greater than he had ever imagined. The boy from Privet Drive was truly gone, replaced by Harry Potter Delicours, wizard of extraordinary power, king of an ancient magical race, and bridge between worlds long divided. But most importantly, no longer alone in bearing the weight of prophecy and expectation. With Fleur beside him, with the support of the family that had claimed him and the friends who stood by him despite the strangeness of his dual destiny, Harry faced the future not with dread but with determination. Whatever Voldemort planned, whatever prejudice and politics might arise from today's revelations, he would meet them as he had met every challenge since the day Fleur found him, with courage, compassion, and the unshakable certainty that love was the most powerful magic of all. The aftermath of the Coronation and Death Eater attack rippled through both the Veela clans and the wizarding world with unprecedented speed. By the following morning, delegations from magical ministries across Europe had arrived at the Delicours estate, seeking explanations and assurances about what many were calling the Golden Flame incident. Harry, still adjusting to the profound magical changes wrought by the ceremony, found himself thrust into diplomacy far earlier than he had anticipated. With Fleur constantly at his side, their new bond making separation physically uncomfortable, he met with ministers, ambassadors, and clan representatives in a seemingly endless parade of formal meetings. The British ministry is particularly concerned, Sebastian reported during a brief respite between delegations. Fudge is insisting on a personal audience, claiming national security implications. Of course he is, Harry sighed, rubbing his temples. The circlet of his office sat on a cushion nearby, he wore it only for formal receptions, finding its weight both physically and symbolically burdensome. What exactly does he expect me to say? Sorry for existing as a magical anomaly, Minister, I'll try to be more conventionally famous in the future. Fleur laughed, the sound bringing an immediate lightening to Harry's mood through their bond. Perhaps we should prepare a standard statement. Something appropriately vague yet reassuring. A wise suggestion, Dumbledore nodded, his eyes twinkling despite the seriousness of the situation. The headmaster had remained at the estate, acting as an unofficial liaison between Harry and the British magical community. Minister Fudge responds well to formal reassurances, particularly when they acknowledge his authority without actually ceding any meaningful control. Politics, Sirius muttered from his position by the window, where he'd been scanning the grounds with habitual vigilance. His experiences as a wrongfully convicted man had left him with a deep distrust of ministry officials. You shouldn't have to navigate this on your 15th birthday, Harry. And yet here we are, Harry replied pragmatically. In truth, he had expected nothing less. His entire life had been shaped by forces beyond his control, prophecies, magical anomalies, the machinations of dark wizards. At least now he faced these challenges from a position of strength, with a clearer understanding of his own capabilities. There is another matter, Sebastian said, his expression grave. The prisoners. The captured Death Eaters, including Bellatrix Lestrange, remained in the specialized containment area beneath the East Gardens. International magical law created a complex jurisdictional question. The crimes had been committed on French soil, but most of the perpetrators were British citizens wanted for previous offences in their homeland. The French ministry has agreed to transfer custody to the British, Sebastian explained, but only under certain conditions. Specifically, they insist on Veela observers during interrogation, given that the attack targeted a Veela ceremonial site and the recently crowned Veela sovereign. An unprecedented concession, Dumbledore noted. The British ministry typically resists any suggestion of sharing jurisdiction, particularly with non-human magical communities. They had little choice, Apollon said from the doorway, having just returned from discussions with the French magical authorities. The evidence of Voldemort's involvement is too significant to ignore, and the French were prepared to make it an international incident if the British attempted to handle this unilaterally. Harry considered this development thoughtfully. Who will represent Veela interests during the interrogations? Traditionally, that would be the sovereign's responsibility, Apollon replied, giving Harry a measured look. But given your age and the complexity of the situation, a proxy could be appointed. Before Harry could respond, a house elf appeared with a message. Young master's friends are asking to see him, the elf announced. The bushy-haired miss is most insistent. Harry smiled despite himself. He had managed only brief conversations with Ron and Hermione since the ceremony, their time together interrupted by the constant flow of official visitors. "Tell them I'll meet them in the South Garden in 15 minutes, Harry decided, standing. "We need to wrap this discussion up anyway." The Bulgarian delegation arrives at noon. With the meeting concluded, Harry and Fleur made their way to the South Garden, a more intimate space than the formal gardens at the front of the estate, and one of Harry's favorite retreats. They found Ron, Hermione, and Gabrielle waiting beneath a large olive tree, engaged in animated conversation that stopped abruptly when they spotted Harry. "There you are!" Hermione exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us with all these important people around." "As if I could," Harry smiled, grateful for the normality of her friendly indignation. "Sorry I've been scarce. It's been intense." "Mate," Ron said, his eyes widening as Harry and Fleur drew closer, "you're still glowing. Both of you." Harry exchanged glances with Fleur. To most observers, the golden flame had receded to invisibility shortly after the ceremony. That Ron could still perceive it suggested an unexpected sensitivity. "You can see it?" Fleur asked with interest. Ron shrugged uncomfortably. "Sort of. It's like a shimmer around you both. More obvious when you're close together." "Fascinating," Hermione breathed. "I can't see anything unusual, but I can feel something. A sort of pressure in the air around you." Her academic curiosity visibly battled with her concern for her friend. "Harry, what exactly happened yesterday? One minute we were watching a beautiful ceremony, and the next there were Death Eaters and this extraordinary golden light, and you and Fleur were different." Harry sighed, settling onto a stone bench with Fleur beside him. How could he explain something he was still processing himself? "The short version," he began. "I'm now officially the Veela King, not just recognized as having the potential, like when I was 11, but fully connected to their ancient magic. And Fleur and I are bonded, magically. It's part of the prophecy." "Bonded?" Ron repeated, his ears reddening slightly. "You mean, like, married?" "Not exactly," Fleur said, though her cheeks colored faintly. "The bond is magical rather than legal or romantic. Though it has elements that resemble those relationships. We can sense each other's emotions, share magical energy, coordinate our powers," Harry explained, trying to keep his explanation clinical despite the profound intimacy the bond actually created. "It's why we were able to generate that golden flame during the attack." Hermione's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Is that why you seem to move in perfect synchronization? Almost like you were reading each other's minds?" "We weren't reading minds exactly," Harry clarified, "but yes, the bond creates a level of coordination that would be impossible otherwise." "Wicked," Ron breathed, clearly impressed despite not fully understanding. Gabrielle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Will you still go back to Hogwarts? Now that you're officially the king?" It was a question Harry had been pondering since the ceremony. His education arrangement, splitting time between Hogwarts and Beauxbatons, had worked well for balancing his dual heritage during his developmental years. But now, with his status formalized and the threat of Voldemort looming larger, the practical considerations were changing. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "There are political implications to consider, security concerns, responsibilities to the Veela clans. But you have to come back." Ron exclaimed, alarmed. "We've got OWLS this year. And Quidditch." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Harry couldn't help laughing. Leave it to Ron to reduce world-changing magical events to their impact on Quidditch. "I want to return," he assured his friend. "I'm just not sure if it's practical anymore. Especially after yesterday, my cover, such as it was, is completely blown." "The British wizarding community will know everything by now," Fleur agreed. "The Death Eaters, the Ministry officials who came afterward, the story will have spread throughout magical Britain already." "It has," Hermione confirmed grimly, pulling a folded newspaper from her bag. Mr. Weasley received this by emergency owl this morning. She handed Harry the Daily Prophet. The headline, spanning the entire front page in dramatic type, read, "Boy who lived crowned Veela king in shocking ceremony." Beneath it, a subheading announced, "Death Eater attack foiled by unprecedented golden flame magic." "Lovely," Harry muttered, scanning the article. It was surprisingly accurate in its basic facts, though liberally embellished with dramatic flourishes and speculative asides about the political implications. "I suppose this saves me the trouble of explaining things when I get back to school." "If you come back," Ron emphasized, clearly still worried. "When," Fleur corrected gently. "Harry's education remains essential, regardless of his new status. We've already discussed this with Madame Maxime and Professor Dumbledore. The arrangement will continue, with some adjustments for security." Relief washed over Ron's face. "Good. Because we've got plans this year. Fred and George have been developing some brilliant new products, and they need testers." "Ronald." Hermione interrupted, scandalized. "Harry can't be involved in your brother's rule-breaking schemes. He's just been crowned king of an entire magical race. All the more reason he needs some normal fun," Ron countered stubbornly. Their familiar bickering washed over Harry like a soothing balm. In the midst of diplomatic complexities and magical transformations, here was something blessedly unchanged, his friends, treating him as simply Harry despite everything. Through the bond, he felt Fleur's understanding and affection. She, more than anyone, recognized his need for these moments of normalcy amid the extraordinary circumstances of his life. As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, summer adventures, speculation about the coming school year, Gabrielle's excitement about starting Beauxbatons, Harry allowed himself to simply enjoy the moment. Tomorrow would bring more diplomatic meetings, decisions about the prisoners, and the continuing adjustment to his new magical reality. But for now, sitting in the garden with friends under the Mediterranean sun, he was just a 15-year-old boy celebrating his birthday. Well, a 15-year-old boy with a magical crown, a soul bond to a part Veela, and a prophesied destiny to unite magical worlds long divided. But still, essentially, just Harry. And for this moment, that was enough. The weeks following the coronation brought gradual adjustment to the new realities of Harry's life. The initial diplomatic frenzy subsided into more structured interactions, with Sebastian and Apollon handling most routine matters while Harry focused on understanding and controlling his enhanced abilities. The bond with Fleur proved both blessing and challenge. The magical connection allowed unprecedented coordination of their powers and provided emotional support through their shared awareness. But it also created a physical dependency that made separation increasingly uncomfortable, a complication they would need to address before Harry's return to Hogwarts. The discomfort should diminish with time and practice, Serafina assured them during one of her frequent visits. The initial phase of bonding requires proximity, but mature bonds can stretch across considerable distances. How considerable? Harry asked, thinking of the channel separating Hogwarts from Beauxbatons. That depends entirely on your magical strength and compatibility, the Oracle replied. But given what I've observed of your particular bond, I would be surprised if conventional distance posed any significant limitation once you've fully adjusted. This was reassuring, though the process of adjustment proved more challenging than anticipated. Their first attempt at deliberate separation, Harry remaining at the manor while Fleur visited the nearby village, resulted in a magical backlash that shattered windows throughout the East Wing and left both with pounding headaches. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly, Fleur suggested afterward, as they recovered in the meditation chamber. We're trying to force distance before establishing proper control. Harry nodded thoughtfully. Like trying to run before learning to walk. They developed a new strategy, focusing first on maintaining their individual magical signatures while in close proximity. This proved the key. Once they could clearly distinguish self from other within the bond, separation became progressively easier. By mid-August, they could maintain comfortable distance for several hours at a time, though the bond remained a constant presence in both their consciousness, a warm awareness of the other's existence that neither would have relinquished given the choice. Meanwhile, the wider magical world adjusted to the revelation of Harry's dual status. The reactions were predictably varied: curiosity and celebration from international magical communities, cautious diplomatic recognition from most European ministries, thinly veiled concern from the British Ministry of Magic. Fudge is walking a political tightrope, Sirius explained during one of their regular strategy sessions. On one hand, you're still the boy who lived, a powerful symbol to the British magical community. On the other, you're now a foreign sovereign with allegiance to a magical race many purebloods consider inferior. Their prejudice is as absurd as it is tiresome, Apollon noted with dignified disdain. Veela magic predates formalized wizardry by millennia. Historical accuracy has never been a strong influence on pureblood politics, Sebastian replied dryly. The British ministry's ambivalence manifested most clearly in their handling of the captured Death Eaters. Despite initial agreement to Veela observers during interrogations, the actual implementation proved problematic. Delays, scheduling conflicts, and bureaucratic obstacles suggested a concerted effort to minimize Veela involvement. They're stalling, Harry concluded after Sebastian reported the latest postponement. But why? Surely they want information about Voldemort's plans as urgently as we do. That assumes Fudge actually accepts Voldemort's return, Dumbledore said gravely. I fear the minister remains in denial, despite mounting evidence. He likely views these prisoners as isolated extremists rather than the vanguard of a resurgent movement. This political maneuvering came to a head in late August, just days before Harry was scheduled to return to Hogwarts. A formal delegation from the British ministry arrived at the Delicours estate, led by Cornelius Fudge himself and accompanied by his senior undersecretary, Dolores Umbridge. Harry recognized the pink-clad woman immediately from her visit 4 years earlier, when she and Fudge had attempted to pressure him into attending Hogwarts exclusively. Her expression upon seeing him, barely concealed distaste beneath a saccharine smile, suggested her opinion of his creature associations had not improved. Mr. Potter, Fudge greeted him with forced joviality. My, how you've grown. And Miss Delacour, lovely as always. Minister Fudge, Harry inclined his head slightly, not quite a bow, but an acknowledgement of the man's position. Thank you for making time in your busy schedule to visit personally. The formal reception was held in the Manor's grand salon, with Sebastian and Apollon flanking Harry and Fleur in a subtle display of unified leadership. Dumbledore, who had remained at the estate as an unofficial advisor, stood slightly apart, his expression benignly interested. Yes, well, matters of international magical cooperation are always a priority, Fudge blustered, adjusting his lime-green bowler hat nervously. Particularly when British citizens are involved in unfortunate incidents on foreign soil. Unfortunate incidents? Fleur repeated, her voice deceptively soft. Is that how the British ministry characterizes a Death Eater attack on a sacred ceremonial site? Fudge cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. While the individuals involved may have some historical associations with unsavory elements, we found no concrete evidence linking the attack to any larger organization or movement. Harry exchanged glances with Dumbledore, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug. Clearly, Fudge was determined to maintain his denial of Voldemort's return, despite Bellatrix Lestrange's capture and the obvious coordination of the attack. Minister, Harry said carefully, Bellatrix Lestrange was quite explicit about her master's interest in the coronation. Surely her testimony, Madame Lestrange has been psychologically compromised by her years in Azkaban, Umbridge interrupted, her girlish voice at odds with the coldness in her eyes. Her testimony is unreliable at best, delusional at worst. How convenient, Sebastian observed mildly. Fudge shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, that brings me to the purpose of our visit. The ministry has completed its preliminary investigation and is prepared to proceed with formal charges against the captured individuals. As a courtesy to our French allies and in recognition of unique circumstances, we've prepared a summary of findings for your review. He gestured to a ministry aide, who presented Sebastian with an official-looking portfolio. Sebastian accepted the document but made no move to open it. And the Veela observers? As previously agreed, representatives of our people should be present for all further proceedings. Ah, about that, Fudge tugged at his collar. After careful consideration of applicable international magical law, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement has determined that while the attack occurred on French soil, jurisdiction properly belongs exclusively to the British Ministry, as all perpetrators are British subjects wanted for previous crimes in our territory. That was not our understanding of our agreement, Apollon said coldly. Legal interpretations evolve with closer examination, Umbridge simpered. Surely you wouldn't want to impede justice by insisting on unconventional participation in sensitive security matters. The temperature in the room rose perceptibly as Apollon's Veela nature responded to the insult. Sensing the dangerous direction of the conversation, Harry stepped forward. Perhaps we could discuss this more productively with specific reference to the applicable statutes, he suggested, drawing on Sebastian's diplomatic tutorials. I'm sure we all want to ensure justice is served while respecting the legitimate interests of all parties. Fudge looked relieved at this apparent olive branch. Yes, precisely. A reasonable approach. We've prepared a detailed legal brief outlining our position, which we'll review thoroughly with our legal advisors, Sebastian interjected smoothly, including experts in international magical law and treaty obligations regarding protected magical sites. The implied threat of escalating the matter to international magical authorities was not lost on Fudge, whose relief quickly transformed back to discomfort. Of course, he muttered. Though I should note that time is of the essence. The Wisengamot has scheduled the preliminary hearings for next week. Before I return to Hogwarts, Harry noted. How convenient. Pure coincidence, I assure you, Fudge insisted, though his darting eyes suggested otherwise. Speaking of Hogwarts, I understand you'll be continuing your unusual educational arrangement this year. With certain modifications for security, yes, Harry confirmed, not elaborating on the extensive protective measures being implemented to accommodate his new status. Splendid, Fudge nodded enthusiastically. Educational continuity is important. Though I should mention, there have been some changes at Hogwarts this year. Ministry initiatives to ensure educational standards and security. Indeed. Dumbledore spoke for the first time, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. I don't recall the Board of Governors approving any significant policy changes for the coming term. New legislation, Umbridge explained with evident satisfaction. Educational Decree No. 22, allowing the Ministry to appoint teachers when the headmaster is unable to find suitable candidates. Her smile widened. As it happens, the defense against the dark arts position remained unfilled rather late this year. How fortunate that a qualified candidate emerged at precisely the right moment, Dumbledore observed, his tone suggesting he found it anything but fortunate. Who? Harry asked, already dreading the answer. You're looking at her, Fudge announced proudly. Madame Umbridge has graciously agreed to take a leave of absence from her senior ministry position to serve Hogwarts in this time of need. Harry felt Fleur's alarm through their bond, matching his own dismay. Umbridge at Hogwarts, with her evident disdain for half-breeds, and clear alignment with Fudge's politics, represented a complication they hadn't anticipated. Congratulations, Professor Umbridge, Harry said, managing to keep his expression neutral despite his internal turmoil. Defense against the dark arts is a challenging subject. I look forward to seeing your approach to practical instruction. Something flickered in Umbridge's eyes, satisfaction mingled with wariness. Oh, I believe you'll find my curriculum quite comprehensive, Mr. Potter. Theory before practice, of course. So important to understand the principles thoroughly before attempting application. The implication was clear, Umbridge had no intention of teaching practical defensive magic. Given Fudge's denial of Voldemort's return, this made a certain twisted sense. Why prepare students to fight a threat the ministry refused to acknowledge? The meeting continued for another hour, covering various diplomatic niceties while carefully avoiding the central issues of Voldemort's return and the ministry's evident intention to maintain control of the Death Eater investigation. By its conclusion, one thing was abundantly clear to Harry: his return to Hogwarts would be far more politically complicated than he had anticipated. As the British delegation prepared to depart, Umbridge approached Harry directly, her voice lowered to ensure privacy. "I look forward to our educational relationship, Mr. Potter," she said, her sweetness failing to mask the threat in her words. "I expect even someone of your unusual status will benefit from proper ministry guidance." "I'm always eager to learn, Professor," Harry replied evenly. "Particularly about the practical applications of magical theory in real-world situations. Like defensive countermeasures against dark wizards, for instance." Umbridge's smile tightened. "Mind that famous scar doesn't go to your head, Mr. Potter. Hogwarts remains a British institution, subject to British magical law. Your foreign titles hold no special privilege within its walls." With that parting shot, she joined Fudge for their departure via the Manor's Fleur connection. Once they had gone, Harry turned to the others with a grimace. "Well, that was illuminating." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed, his expression grave. "The Ministry appears determined to extend its influence at Hogwarts while simultaneously controlling the narrative surrounding recent events." "They're afraid," Sebastian observed. "Fudge fears acknowledging Voldemort's return almost as much as he fears the political implications of a British magical hero with sovereign status over a non-human magical community. The question," Sirius said, having joined them after the delegation's departure, "is how this affects our plans. Harry, with Umbridge at Hogwarts specifically to watch you and undermine Dumbledore, do we need to reconsider your return?" Harry considered this carefully, weighing political considerations against practical ones. Hogwarts remained central to his education as a wizard, providing connections and knowledge unavailable elsewhere. Yet Umbridge's presence transformed the school from a sanctuary to a potential battleground. "I need to go back," he decided finally. "Not just for my education, but to understand what the Ministry is planning. If they're positioning Umbridge at Hogwarts, it suggests a larger strategy to control information and influence the next generation." "A perceptive assessment," Dumbledore nodded. "The Ministry fears what it cannot control, and your dual status represents exactly that, power outside their traditional framework of authority." "Then we adapt," Fleur said pragmatically. "Increase security protocols, establish emergency communication channels, prepare contingency plans for rapid extraction if necessary." The discussion continued into the evening, analyzing the implications of the Ministry's moves and developing countermeasures. By its conclusion, a modified plan had been established for Harry's return to Hogwarts, one that balanced educational needs with security concerns and political realities. 2 days later, Harry stood on platform 9 3/4, surrounded by the controlled chaos of students boarding the Hogwarts Express. Despite the normalcy of the scene, subtle differences marked his changed status. Veela guards disguised as ordinary travelers maintained discreet surveillance of the platform. Order members positioned strategically throughout King's Cross provided additional security. And the stairs following Harry were more numerous and blatant than ever before. The Daily Prophet's coverage of the coronation had ensured that every magical family in Britain knew of Harry's dual heritage and new title. Parents whispered behind their hands while pointing him out to their children. Students gathered in clusters, watching him with expressions ranging from awe to suspicion to outright hostility. "Just like first year all over again," Ron observed as they navigated toward the train. "Except worse." "It'll die down eventually," Hermione said optimistically, though her frequent glances at the watching crowd suggested she didn't entirely believe it. Harry, who had anticipated this reaction, maintained a calm exterior that belied his internal discomfort. The bond with Fleur helped, her steady presence in his mind providing an emotional anchor despite her physical absence. They had tested their connection extensively over increasing distances during the past weeks, confirming that the English Channel posed no significant barrier to their magical link. "There you are." A familiar voice called as they approached the train. Neville Longbottom pushed through the crowd, his round face flushed with exertion. "I've been looking everywhere for you three." "Neville." Hermione greeted him warmly. "How was your summer?" "Good," thanks, he replied distractedly before turning to Harry. Is it true? What the prophet's been saying? About you being some kind of Veela royalty? Harry sighed, knowing this would be the first of countless similar inquiries. It's complicated, Neville. But yes, essentially true, though the prophet got some details wrong. Neville's eyes widened. Wow. I mean, wow. And there was really an attack by Death Eaters? And you fought them off with some kind of special fire magic? With help, Harry emphasized, not wanting to feed the heroic narrative that inevitably formed around his experiences. There were many skilled witches and wizards present who defended everyone. Before Neville could ask more questions, a shrill whistle announced the train's imminent departure. The 4 students hurried aboard, finding an empty compartment toward the rear of the train. As they settled in, Harry noticed the curious faces peering through the glass door, students slowing as they passed, hoping for a glimpse of the newly crowned Veela king. This is going to be a long year, he muttered to Ron, who nodded sympathetically. Look on the bright side, his friend suggested. Maybe they'll be so distracted by the Veela thing that they'll forget about the whole boy who lived business. Doubtful, Hermione interjected pragmatically. If anything, this just adds to the mythology. Harry Potter, orphaned hero, Triwizard champion, and now sovereign of an ancient magical race. She gave Harry an apologetic look. You have to admit, it sounds like something from a children's storybook. My life usually does, Harry agreed wryly. Though the real version tends to involve more near-death experiences and fewer happy endings than the stories. As the train pulled away from the platform, Harry turned his gaze to the window, watching London slip away. Through the bond, he felt Fleur's encouraging presence, her confidence in him, her certainty that he could navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. This year would be different, perhaps more difficult than any previous one. Between Umbridge's presence at Hogwarts, the Ministry's political maneuvering, Voldemort's growing threat, and the implications of his new status, Harry faced a complex web of challenges that would test both aspects of his heritage. But as the countryside began to replace urban sprawl outside the window, Harry found himself surprisingly calm. The scared boy from the cupboard who had once boarded this train, desperately hoping to find belonging in the magical world, was gone, replaced by a young man who had found not just one home but 2, not just one heritage but a blend of traditions that strengthened rather than divided him. Whatever the coming year might bring, Harry Potter Delicour, wizard and Veela king, would face it not alone but connected, to Fleur through their bond, to his friends through loyalty and shared experience, to his adoptive family through love, and to both his magical communities through responsibility and purpose. The bridge between worlds that prophecy had foretold was no longer a distant destiny but a role he had begun to actively embody. And perhaps, in that bridging, lay the key to facing not just the immediate challenges of Hogwarts under Ministry interference, but the greater threat of Voldemort's return and the deep divisions that had weakened the magical world for generations. As the Hogwarts Express carried him north toward whatever awaited, Harry touched the heartstone pendant that never left his neck, Fleur's gift, the symbol of their connection, and a reminder that even when physically separated, he was never truly alone. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.